better than a short track, and we're here for 2 short track races where the tensions are sure to rise.
Absolutely. Richmond is a tough track, and I got to tell you, these drivers don't have it easy. They're coming off of a track known as Darlington, one of the toughest tracks on the circuit, right over to Richmond, which is another short track, another opportunity for chaos to arise and the playoff grid to shift.
And as we progress through the playoffs, you're going to be constantly hearing about the grid and how they move around after each event. And here is where it stands in terms of the playoffs after the trip from the Lady in Black at Darlington last week. Bryson Nixabaugh lapped the entire field to win last week, and he is locked into the next round of 12. Jonathan Delaney will be second, Preston McRae third, Eric Wineland fourth. Cameron Stone will wrap up this top 5. Lots of drivers being moved up, moved down after the calamity that happened at Darlington last week, Andre. And we're seeing a couple of drivers already down to the bubble that had rough nights. Cam Caldwell, Josh Coppernall, and even some drivers on the bubble like Cody Bird and Hamid.
Well, some of those drivers on the bubble are kind of catching a lucky break this week, as in the off week it was determined that Cameron Stone would receive a 25-point penalty for the rough driving post-race with his teammate Cody Bird. Now that isn't displayed on this graphic. That where he is on the graphic right now, the 2,057 points, remove 25 from that, that's where he actually stands. So that's going to help a lot of these guys out, and a lot of the drivers said it might have been a little bit too harsh of a punishment for Cameron Stone, and his teammate also received a probation for that driving, but this could be a big game changer. I mean, that kind of puts Cameron Stone in a must-win situation come next week at Bristol.
And here are the looks at the race results from last week of Bryson Nixabaugh and the phenomenal effort of lapping the entire field. Preston McRae, Jonathan Delaney were the top 3. Damaris Hickenbottom fourth. Eric Wineland rounded out the top 5. Then Drumhiller, Mabry, Kevin Steele, Alex Princeton, and Jack Durham round out the top 10. 3 drivers received probations for what happened at Darlington last week, most notably Josh Coppernall, Ryan Samuelson, and Cody Bird on probation for the rest of the season, also along with Cameron Stone, who will not be attending tonight's race due to suspension. Also, another driver not in this race tonight as well. Cody Bird will be out of the race due to out-of-town travel, so he won't be able to make it tonight here at Richmond. Possible points lost down the road. But Andre, we technically saw what happened at Darlington, and really a lot of things that really changed the dynamics of the race. Most notably, we see night racing, which we're going to be seeing over the course of this entire round until we get out of Bristol and go to next week in the round of 12 and start that up. But we're seeing sunset tonight races where I think when the lights come on, the drama also comes up as well, because you're having a lot of drivers getting that little bit extra grip from the nighttime, but everything seems to go crazy at the nighttime also.
Absolutely. When the sun goes down, the grip levels go up. And when you have extra grip, that gives you a little bit more faith in your car. You drive it in the corners deeper. You give it a little bit more throttle coming out. And overall, you just push the car a lot harder because you can. So these drivers are going to be bumper to bumper. It's going to be a lot of close action tonight and in the following week at Bristol. These night races are some of my favorite, Ken.
And the night race is sure to be a lot of fun. A little info about Richmond Raceway in the Virginia Commonwealth before we get started. 0.7 miles around this racetrack, 0.75 miles actually. Of course, 4 turns around this oval, 14 degrees of banking in the turns. You're going to see a lot of drivers over the course of the night shift to the bottom of the racetrack in every corner to get all the way to the yellow line on the racetrack to get the maximum amount of time and, of course, advantage on the drivers on the outside. That seems to be the best line going around this track. Track opened in 1946, so long tradition of racing here at Richmond Raceway, and it has provided a lot of chaos and a lot of great racing as well. We've seen so many of great drivers take over this racetrack and have a little fun of their own, have a little chaos of their own. And of course, a couple of seasons ago when NASCAR had this race as its last race of the regular season, it brought a lot of great finishes along the way. Seeing a lot of drivers getting their warm-ups in and getting all their practices done and setting their times for what will be an exciting 400 laps. A very, very long race, Andre, and it's the second round of the round of 16. So already drivers getting into their form, I should say, or at least starting to get into their motto of what they're going to be doing over the course of this round to set themselves up for next round.
Absolutely, 400 laps, and what that tells me is not only is this going to be a grueling endurance event for these guys who have to keep on that wheel for 400 laps, but it also opens the door to a lot of strategy. This track wears and tears on the tires, very tight corners with a lot of banking. That will kill your right front, and a lot of the short pitting strategies that we've seen in the past at these 1.5 miles are only going to be more effective here tonight.
And also coupling with the track changing over the course of the night, the weather will be changing over the course of the evening. We're looking at 80 degrees here in Richmond, Virginia, 80% humidity, but we won't be looking for any rain out on the racetrack, of course, on the iRacing service. Winds looking northeast at 7 miles per hour, says 9 miles per hour south. I guess it must have changed over the course of practice going into this one here. And of course, we're looking at mostly cloudy conditions. You see the sun just peeking through the dark clouds there. It's going to be all gone by the time we reach further into this race. It's going to be a lot of fun to see. Practice has just about ended, which means everyone will start to grid on the racetrack, and that means it's the perfect time to get to your starting grid. See where everybody files out for tonight's event. Jonathan Delaney takes pole with a 21.309. He will be on the front of the row. He will lead the field to the green flag. Right alongside him, a new driver in this field taking his first start. We're continuing to see drivers in their first start show out early. Adam Benefield in the 83 starts second.
Row 2, it's Bryson Hixenbaugh, last week's dominant winner. Starting on the inside and outside of him in P4, it's going to be Rich Petrucco, a driver who's been dominating the truck side of this league and now carrying a lot of that momentum in the Cup.
And then back to row 3 is the 7 of Wayne Grassy. Right alongside him, a driver who struggled at Darlington after being involved in the first incident in the first yellow. Kevin Steele looking to rebound on the short track tonight.
And after Kevin Steele, you've got Dave Fugue Jr., who had a better finish than he was expecting at Darlington, finally overcoming his internet issues. And next to him, it's going to be Brandon Pierce in P8.
Back to row 5, Joseph Lesser in the 9 car with a 21.601 easily puts him in 9th. And right alongside him in the top 10 is Danny Myatt in 20th.
And past Danny Myatt, you have Cam Caldwell and Damaris Hickenbottom. Now, Damaris is coming off of a great points day at Darlington, got a little bit further off the bubble than he was before, but he's still got to have a good performance tonight if he wants to feel secure in getting into the next round.
In row 7, Zach Probst in the 162 will start 13th. Right to his outside, one of the drivers on probation that we mentioned, Ryan Samuelson, will grid 14th.
Behind them, it's William Boiver, that's a new driver to this league, as well as Alex Princeton, a returning driver.
Back to row 9, Matthew Woods and Randy Drumhiller will be 17th and 18th into row number 9.
And behind Drumhiller, you've got Christopher Hamann and Daniel Fields.
And then back to row number 10, the 17 of Christopher Hamann, also looking for a better run after his wreck at Darlington. And back to row 11, Brian Mabry. There's Christopher Hamann there, and Daniel Fields was outside in the 66.
Behind them, you've got Josh Coppernoll and Eric Wineland. Eric having a string of tough races going into the playoffs, looking for some redemption tonight.
Final row of tonight's action will round out the 25-car field will be Jack Durham and Preston McRae will be the final drivers in this field for 400 laps here at Richmond Raceway. Very, very long race along this tonight. It's going to be a long one. Of course, our stages go lap 80, then lap 235 will be the end of stage 2. We'll hopefully stay all the way to lap 400 and the checkered flag. Jonathan Delaney and the 27 of Rich Petrucco. Adam Benefield looks like he's not starting this race, at least on the grid, which will move the 27 up. But nonetheless, green flag is out on the racetrack. We're playoff racing from Richmond.
And as they sail it into turn 1 and 2, they are absolutely door to door. The 27 got a great jump, almost getting ahead of the leader there. Now, obviously, the inside line is a preferred line, so John Delaney is going to get clear. And now it looks like Bryson Hixenbaugh is going to take advantage of that, try to get up underneath second place and claim that second position for himself.
Hixenbaugh coming off the strong run, like we mentioned, at Darlington, wanting to continue his stride. Now to the back of Jonathan Delaney. And now, Andre, we did mention those two drivers there, Delaney and Hixenbaugh, which was a great talking point over the course of Darlington because those were some of the closest drivers on the track. At least Delaney was very, very close to contending for that race lead. He was there at the end of stage 1, but it was not good enough. But he's going to have a fight to pick with that 63 right now because he has easily come to that back bumper in the opening laps.
John Delaney feels like he is due another win, and I can't say he's wrong. His last win coming a while ago at a plate track. Yeah, he has yet to win at a short track in this league, although he has a lot of short track speed. I think he was pretty disappointed with the way that his car kind of fell off in the long runs last week, so we're going to see if maybe he's done anything to address that issue this week. I know John Delaney, he's a thinking driver. He knows a little bit about setups, and hopefully he's got something figured out. But we've got a new leader, Ken. Bryson Hixenbaugh has taken the lead, and that's kind of a familiar sight, I think.
course, it's familiar when we saw him last week in his dominating effort, so he's back to the race lead. Will lead the opening laps, at least to lap number 5. Delaney will be right behind. Wayne Grassy picked up a spot ever since the drop of the green flag. Petruccio has fallen to 4th. And it seems to be this 4-car train all the way back to Kevin Steele, which seems to be a couple of car lengths. And then Steele holding this very long line with Danny Myatt and Brandon Pierce.
I tell you what, they are really not giving Jonathan Delaney an easy time, because now Wayne Grass is coming up behind him, getting right up on that bumper of that playoff driver. Now, Wayne is no longer, he is not in the playoffs, he's not playoff eligible, but he still wants to get a win. He's had a lot of speed, a lot of momentum these last few weeks, had a pretty solid performance at Darlington prior to a few run-ins he had about mid-race, and now up into P3, looking to try to overtake Delaney.
On board with the rear bumper of the 6 of Delaney. He's going to have the 7 there to the inside. And just like I mentioned right before this race started, it's going to be the inside line being the predominant lane. You're going to want to stick all the way to that yellow line. And you want to be there to get the most momentum. And, of course, make all the passes on the racetrack. We're going to see a lot of drivers swoop to the inside, at least on the front straightaways, or the back straightaway as well. And they're going to be looking to the inside, making those moves, and it seems to be the most efficient, especially early on in this race. Delaney will fall back to 4th behind Rich Petruccio. You're on board with the 27 going into turn 3.
You know, I gotta wonder, you mentioned these guys are all running the bottom line. It's the preferred line. I gotta wonder if the top is going to come in a little bit later once the tires have worn and the cars start to get a little bit more understeer. Perhaps that top line where you can carry a little bit more momentum will be slightly more viable, but right now it is pretty much a freight train on the bottom. You can see they go up to the top of the track on the straightaway so that they can get the best arc down to the bottom, get that run down the banking towards that yellow line on the apron, and then when they come out of the corner, they're drifting right back up. So definitely running the bottom on these corners is where these drivers want to be, but again, that could change as the tires wear and the track temperature starts to decrease.
Nixon Ball will come off of turn 4, and we're just going to take a moment of silence to honor the victims of those affected by the September 11th attacks. Of course, today is September 11th, so we're going to take a moment of silence to honor those victims. Nixon Boss still leading this entire field on lap number 15 of the 400, still early dominating, and has already picked up a 1.9 second gap to Wayne Grassy sitting in 3rd. We have yet to see Delaney come back from getting past from the 7 and the 27, as we got a yellow on the racetrack. The first yellow of the evening. We'll see who might have been the culprit this time. The 217 seems to be awfully slow. I see damage on the 66 of Daniel Fields as well. And Jack Durham also slow. Preston McRae a little slow on the racetrack, possibly just letting one driver by. We're going to take a replay, and indeed it is the 66 of Daniel Fields involved in the first yellow. This was off of turn number 2. Looked a little high off the racetrack, and then contact with him in the 217 puts the 217 into the inside wall. And then the 66 also had damage from that as well.
I think that's something you're going to see several times tonight, Ken. When you come out of turn 2, that change in banking gets that car really unsettled, and it wants to shoot up towards that wall. And the safer barrier actually sort of shoots out a little bit deeper into the straightaway than it does in the corner. So it's very easy to get some understeer coming out of these corners, especially if you're not prepared for it once the tires move. Because I feel like on fresh tires, maybe you got a little bit of confidence and you send it in, and then a few laps later, you can't do it anymore, and it's hard to judge. But we got a lot of cars coming down pit road, including our leaders. So Bryson Hixenbaugh has made his way down pit road with Wayne Grassy, Rich Petrucco, and the number 6 of John Delaney following along. So most of the lead pack has come down pit road, Ken.
Hixenbaugh leading the entire field down pit road, and everyone in this top 5 and pretty much everyone behind them will stick to this strategy for the most part at the moment. It'll be all 4 tires and fuel for their race cars. Hickenbottom will be the last one. Actually, he will be the first one out. So it looks like he missed his stall, so he will be taking another trip. But for the fight off pit road for the race lead, Hixenbaugh will take it, and a quick fight between Rich Petrucco and Wayne Grassy. They came out a 1-2 with each other. Wayne Grassy picked up the spot just as they were going to the line. It looked like the 27 might have had the spot, but he'll still fall back to third. The top 4 will remain stable as Kevin Steele, Danny Myatt. Actually, those drivers will also remain the same for the most part. Look how close that was between Grassy and the 27 of Petrucco, just awfully close to that line. And we're probably going to see a lot of that as we go on, Andre, through the night. We're going to see a lot of drivers shake up that pit strategy, and we'll see some photo finishes, not at least for the finish now, but for the fight off pit road.
Definitely. And, you know, I got to say I'm a little surprised, Ken. We only put about 17 laps of green flag racing on those tires. So I could see a few drivers that are further back coming down pit road pretty easily. But I'm a little surprised that most of the leaders came down pit road and decided to swap out tires so early into the run. I mean, you got to think this is a short track where you're going to be putting down a good 40 to 60 laps on tires usually. Wouldn't it be a little bit more beneficial to try and stretch tires out as far as you can, especially early on in the race? I guess a lot of these drivers disagree with me, and that's why they're down there and I'm up here, but some interesting strategy going on the track.
Yeah, we'll be seeing that over the course of the evening. It's not a long way to stage 1. As I just mentioned, it was lap 80 where stage 1 will conclude, and then you have to go all the way to lap 230 to conclude stage 2. So it's a very short trip to lap 80. I'm sure a lot of these drivers on the track are starting to think about that lap 80 mark, where the yellow will come out at the end of that lap. And then obviously from there on, we'll go more than 100 laps. So I'd say 120 laps until we get to stage number 2. We've got the 1 green signal. Pace car will be in front of the entire field, doubled up with Hixenbaugh and Wayne Grassy. Falling out road number 1, Petrucco Delaney right behind. And we saw this at Darlington, Andre, and hopefully it may stay the same, and it does. Hixenbaugh with the early jump. He's going to lead the restart early at the rest of the field.
Another massive jump by Bryson Hixenbaugh, just like we saw last week at Darlington. Although this time he brought a friend with him. He brought Rich Petrucco in tow. And now Petrucco has gotten around the number 7 of Wayne Grassy. Although he's under fire, Wayne Grassy gets to the bottom, says nope, thinks better of it, maybe not quite enough grip to try and make that move. So he's falling back in line, but I think he's just going to line himself up and try to make that pass. We saw in the first green flag run there that Wayne Grassy had quite a bit of speed, and the 27 wasn't able to quite get around him. So I think we're going to have quite a close battle here as Danny Myatt now sneaking into the picture behind them. He has gotten around the number 6 of John Delaney, and he's trying to get up into this top 3 and possibly claim a podium position for the stage.
We're seeing a lot of drivers shuffle up, especially within that last restart. Most notably, you just mentioned Danny Myatt scoops up to 4th. He just got by Delaney. We saw Kevin Steele fall back to 7th. That leaves Joseph Lester to fall to 6th. And Cameron Caldwell, I say Brandon Pierce, William Boisver as well. Those drivers also going for positions early into this restart. And Brandon Pierce is stuck to that high side. You see the 47 get by. Now the 17 will peak low. He has no other choice but just to allow that outside. He's able to cut it off this time by. So a lucky break for that 38. But as soon as you get to that high side, it's probably not where you want to be because you got to be looking for that opening on the inside too.
Absolutely. That's a horrible feeling to get trapped on the high side and you look in your mirror and you just see a freight train of cars coming on the bottom line because you know that the longer you're up there, the more positions you're going to lose. And it seems like he might have been fighting a tight car. So if his car is tight this early on these fresh tires, that could be a problem later on down the line. We'll have to see. But, man, this battle's still going on between the 7 and the 27. And a little bit further back in the field, that is the 16 and the 5 you're looking at. And they've been going at it this whole time. We got a lot of close racing throughout this field. Now the 7 car looking high. He got a big run going into the corner. Wow. what a run he got there, but he was not able to finish out the job. The top line just did not have the speed. And that actually gave Rich Petrucco in that 27 a little bit of breathing room. So now the gap is there. He doesn't have that pressure of a car being right on his bumper and potentially taking the air out from underneath of him. And that's going to give him maybe an opportunity to try and close this gap to the leader.
Yeah, and as soon as you get that breathing room, you get that gap between you and the driver fighting right behind you, you're going to be wanting to focus at least on your own race car and race the track more than you race the drivers around you. You're on board with the in-car cam of Joseph Lesser. Just mentioned he got by to 6th after getting by Kevin Steele. He is still yet to get by Delaney, but you see the gap between the two as now we got a yellow, lap 28. Second caution of the evening, and it involves, I'm still looking to see who might have been involved in that one. It seems to be the 16, Orion Samuelson, all by himself on the racetrack, and it is. Around on the front straightaway, was able to save it down to the grass, but just wasn't enough.
That was a good save. I'm not sure it was by himself. We're going to see. He was racing pretty hard with this number 5, as well as the 31. Oh, it was by himself. He just lost it coming out of turn 4. An impressive save. I thought once he clipped that grass, it might just keep on sliding, but he gathered it up, got out of everybody's way, and kept on trucking. So an impressive save, but an unfortunate mistake.
See the in-car cam, this is him going around, and as soon as he clips the grass, he's able to whip it back straight. But of course, as he's spinning down the racetrack, that's enough for the flagman, who's seeing it in first eye view, just right there. You can see him just standing at the flag stand, and he can see the 16 going around, and that's easily enough to whip out that yellow flag, and that'll be enough to trigger the yellow. Second yellow for tonight's action here at Richmond. We had that first run, Andre. We had just about 16 laps before the first yellow came out. And then we saw that second yellow come through, and we're now not seeing a lot of drivers down pit road. Of course, we're seeing guys like Ryan Samuelson, who just went around down pit road. Actually, Delaney is on pit road. A handful of drivers taking their shot at pit road. I was expecting way less. We're seeing all but 2 drivers on the lead lap stay out. And of course, with the exception of Daniel Fields, who's now 1 lap down. But without Hixenbaugh and Petrucco, it's the rest of the field going for service.
That is massive. It's been about 12 laps since we last had our caution, so that doesn't sound like much time on these fresh tires, but it does slow you down by a few tenths. And at a track like Darlington, where your lap times are down into the 20s and 21s, that's a lot. That is a lot of space on the track. So when you're the leader, when you're Bryson Hixenbaugh, you don't know what anybody behind you is going to do. You can only assume that whatever you do, they're going to do the opposite. So it's kind of a darned if you do, darned if you don't situation. If he had come down pit road, I think a lot of the guys behind him probably wouldn't have. So that's kind of where being the leader can be a disadvantage, especially at these short tracks, Ken.
Yeah, and it plays a factor to a lot of other tracks on the schedule. Obviously, tracks like the track we visited last week at Darlington and the 1.5 miles. And when you're the leader, sometimes you have to direct sort of the rest of the field behind you, because some drivers right behind you, if they're behind the race leader, they usually will follow what the leader does. It's usually monkey see, monkey do. And if Hixenbaugh probably went down pit road, we'll see a lot of drivers follow suit. But this time, we're just seeing a lot of drivers differ up, or maybe even get those fresh tires because they want to be safe, maybe top off on fuel while they're at it. And since they're there with a lot of other drivers behind them, much like Wayne Grassi, Denny Maya, Delaney, and the rest of them that also pitted, they also have that chance to not lose as much ground in the process. They can go down pit road, maybe lose a spot or two, or gain a spot or two, or stay where they were when the caution came out. So it's not much to lose, especially when you're making these moves. But one driver that did lose positions was Wayne Grassi. He was sitting 3rd right behind 2nd place Rich Petrucco, but ever since that pit stop, he's dropped a couple spots down to Brandon Pierce, Delaney, and Danny Myatt, who will be 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And Grassi will have to restart on the outside in 6th as soon as we get to 1 to green signal. The other thing about Bryson Hixenbaugh, I was looking at some of the data before this race, and I was looking at Richmond and what happened at that track, and the race winner there, the race winner was Hixenbaugh. So it's basically his playing ground right now for this season. Nobody else has beat him this season. We've only been once to Richmond, so this is our 2nd time around, Andre. And for Hixenbaugh, if he's got over that win on the first race, it's definitely helping him at least more of his comfortability going into tonight.
Absolutely. But also, it's a learning opportunity. A lot of these guys in the field raced with him last time, and so they maybe know a little bit more about his driving style. And that's information that they can use to try and maybe trump him tonight and get that win. But the pace car pulls off of the track. Bryson Ixenbaugh is going to hold up the field and then step on the loud pedal, not quite getting the jump he got before, but still securely taking the lead as Danny Myatt on those fresh tires is now looking low, trying to get up front.
Not as much to gap the 27 of Petrucco this time, but Danny might have some word about this to Petrucco. Remember, they are on the fresh tires, so they will have the momentum right now. You're on board with Petrucco, and he's got a bumper full of that 20 and the 6 also following by, and they've still yet to get by as Danny Myatt's still trying to find that opening to the inside, but he's yet to find one.
I tell you, when you got fresher tires than the guy in front of you, but you can't pass him, it really does feel like you're in a 160-mile-an-hour traffic jam. So I can only imagine the frustration that the 20 car is feeling as he's seeing Bryson Ixenbaugh pull away. But again, we're early on in the race. There's no reason to get aggressive about overtaking him. If he can get around him here, maybe look to the bottom, then that's great. If he can't clear him, then wait it out. I mean, we're only on lap 36, but he did get alongside Rich Petrucco's door temporarily, now to the quarter panel as they send it into the corner, and those fresh tires are going to be the winning factor. He's going to secure himself into P2 as Jonathan Delaney has been slightly closing the gap to Petrucco while this is going on. Now Wayne Grassi working his way around John Delaney. So I think it's clear to see the drivers that are hungry for this win and that have the setups that are really handling this track the best right now. Is the top five, top six in general has remained pretty similar all race long thus far. But right now, man, you're looking on board of the 9 car. That's Rich. I'm sorry. Whoa, that is Joseph Lester, and the 38 has gone around behind him.
Brandon Pierce around. Backs up a lot of drivers. The 42 of Coppernoll involved. Preston McRae to slam on the brakes to stop all the way next to the outside wall and the Go Bowling sign. And Daniel Fields is there all too late. There's the 17 of Christopher Hamann, another driver that possibly was looking for a better run tonight after his horrible run at Darlington after the wreck. And we'll take another look at it. This was fighting for about, I'd say, 6th place, about top 5. This was right behind Wayne Grassi and Jonathan Delaney as Pierce was coming in. Looked to be a little too deep. Got to the back of the 6, and then the 17 just trying to get around to the outside. Just really didn't have enough space, and then Preston McRae stacks in. He gets damaged. Coppernoll luckily was able to stop the race car right before, and he is still with a relatively clean race car. You're on board with Hamann. This is going into turn 1, and just right there, nowhere to go but the outside.
Yeah, they hit the Go Bowling sign, but it seemed more like they were playing dominoes with that domino effect. Seems like cars just kept piling in. And that's the thing about these short tracks, man. It is almost impossible to avoid something like that. Once you're committed to your line in the corner, your car is pretty much planted there. It's hard to alter your course. There was nothing that really any of those drivers could have done. It was just a fact of the matter. When you see somebody wrecking in front of you, there's not much you can do about it. So, unfortunate break early on. And this has been pretty caution-filled early on. And I got to wonder if maybe this is starting to affect some of these drivers' strategies. If they're thinking, okay, we're going to get a lot of cautions, and I see that now, maybe they're thinking about, okay, what kind of tire pressures can I put on this car that are better for short runs, or should I account for short runs in later on in the race? But 2 playoff drivers involved in that wreck, Ken, that could have huge implications.
And Andre, you brought up a great point where it could really splice up the strategies and change it all completely. You can have a change of plans just as quickly as you make them, because you can have your plans already set for a long green flag run. All of a sudden you see the yellow flag come out and then it's all reset. You're really going to have to differ up your strategies in order to get to the same result maybe you were planning earlier, and that could have affected some of the strategies here that we just saw down pit road on the last caution. Danny Myatt, Wayne Grassi, Jonathan Delaney, Joseph Lester, all the drivers back there that went down pit road, they still have the fresher tires, and possibly Ixenbaugh and Petrucco, who stayed out, were probably looking for a longer run. So now this just changes everything on how they have to handle, because not only do they still have to fight, the drivers and keep themselves stable up at the front where they want to be, they have the drivers still with the fresher tires to come back behind them. And it's also another case on the other side where the drivers who are on the fresh tires on that last restart probably were looking for a long run to be able to gain more ground down the road and have at least less wear on their tires as the 2 leaders that stayed out. But then it could equalize as soon as you get these yellows since you're going so slow.
Absolutely. I think Bryson was looking for a long run. If he could just get a 30 or 40 lap run like he was planning on, then the guys behind him, their tires would have eventually faded and kind of leveled out. But right now, he's got a challenge ahead of him. He's got Danny Myatt in that number 20 machine with over 10 lap fresher tires starting right alongside him. Nobody to hold him up, no traffic to separate the two of them. It's just going to be whose car has the grip, who can send it into turn one a little bit deeper. And right now, I think it's Danny Myatt that has that advantage, as well as anybody else behind him who pitted. So this is going to be an absolutely chaotic restart, I think.
Want to grow a single from the pace car, so it will be double up all the way through this field. Hixenbaugh and Myatt will be the 2-1s to occupy the front row. It was Petrucco on the top last time, but he is now on the inside of row 2, possibly where he wants to be, although we have seen Hixenbaugh just shoot away at the rest of this field on every restart, and obviously that is easily able to allow that space for any driver on the outside of row 1 to clear them, and it won't really much be a challenge to the inside for the driver on the outside of row 1. But meanwhile, Hixenbaugh will step on the gas pedal once again, and another lightning jump as we get the halfway to go signal from lap 80 and our stage 1 conclusion as we continue now, and Hixenbaugh will be at the front of this field. Myatt will fall to second. We'll see if he's able to gain any ground from here.
Some hard racing between the number 7 and the number 9. Wayne Grassley boosts the 27. Petrucco's going around in turn 4.
Petrucco around off turn 4, the 83 slipping by, and Coppernote now slamming in. Caution out once again. We're seeing a lot of yellow stack up early in this running, just way before the stage 1 conclusion. We're going to take a look at this. This was going into turn 3, and just a battling between the 7 and the 9 enabled that 7 to just go straight into the corner and just dove it so deep to the point where the 27 just got clipped there, and he had no choice, and he just went around. And then at the end, some collateral damage with the 42 of Coppernote, and in which he also gets involved as well. And the 42 also had a lucky break getting around the last time, and not so lucky this time, and he will be one of the victims there with damage at the front end. And another playoff driver. In fact, we're on board with him right now.
I'll tell you, before that happened, the 7 was getting a lot of pressure from Joseph Lester in that 9. He was getting pushed down the straightaway, and I think driving it deep into the corner was just a bit of a defensive mechanism. He was trying to drive it in deep so that he wouldn't get hit from behind, and unfortunately, he went a little too deep, and he got into Rich Petrucco accidentally, and unfortunately spun the 27 out of a top 5 position. So we're now riding on board with Petrucco, and as you can see, just an impact from the back, and he's going around. It doesn't take much here, man. These cars get unsettled with this short track package. We've got practically no spoiler on the back of these things, no downforce. They are a handful. You get just the slightest bump. I mean, sometimes they don't even have to hit you. If they just take the air off your spoiler, that's enough to send these cars around sometimes. So it doesn't take much, but unfortunately, Petrucco is going to have to make his way down pit road along with the 42 of Coppernote. They're going to get whatever damage they might have accrued fixed up, possibly get some fresh tires, and top off on fuel and try and recover, although they're not going to have much time. By the time we go green, Ken, it's going to be somewhere around lap 50, and that's only going to be about 30 to go in the stage. So it's going to be a tough road to make up these spots they've lost.
Yeah, but I think on the bright side, if you're looking at more yellows down the road, which we have had through this trend already in this race, so we've had a couple of yellows just easily within each other, or just a couple of laps of touring before we get that next yellow. So maybe it's not the worst situation for drivers like Coppernote and like Petrucco. They can get their damage fixed in now, maybe go a lap down for the moment, or even not. They can even still stay within the lead and be wary of the drivers in the pace car there. As you see Petrucco getting out now in front of the pace car, so he won't lose that lap. He'll stay on the lead lap, and then as soon as cautions come out, they can start to maybe get some of that damage more fixed if they have any left, and if they've kind of made the shortcut to get some damage fixed early on, but not entirely. And we'll just see how that develops and if they're able to get back. But it's certainly not over. It's a very long race, 400 laps, and we still got 2 stages to get through before we get to the checkered flag. So still a long way all the way through. Hixenbaugh continues to lead as we still got the caution on lap number 48. And as we've seen in short track racing, Andre, was this really what we expected from a short track, especially coming into tonight?
Oh, yeah. I don't think we could have expected anything different. Now, Rich Petrucco, I should mention, he's come back down pit road. He's going to try to get out ahead of the pace car, but yep, here he comes again out of pit road. Looks like he's going to beat the pace car again. Luckily, that's everything. Staying on the lead lap is massively important here, especially when you have drivers that are going to be spinning out or having blown engines that are going laps down. You want to make sure that you don't have to rely on being the lucky dog, that you are on the lead lap, and that's what Petrucco's doing. He's coming down pit road, getting some damage fixed up, and then leaving pit road before the pace car can lap him. So unfortunately, didn't have much time the second time he came down, so maybe some optional repairs left over on that machine, but it looks pretty clean overall as the lights have gone off on the pace car. He's catching up in the field, and Bryson Hixenbaugh and Danny Myatt will once again lead him to the green, Ken.
Pace car down pit road. It'll leave the 63 back to the restart on lap 50 of the 400 scheduled laps, and easily out to the front of the field to clear by just a couple of car lengths into turn one. Danny Myatt and Joseph Lester, who picked up a lot after those last couple of restarts, he will now look to the bottom of Myatt for second. Oh boy, what a great run for that 9 already early to pick up spots.
Joseph Lester has been powering through the field, making some impressive overtakes. And 20 car got into the wall a little bit, almost slid down into the 9. That could have been disastrous. Luckily, everybody kept it under control. The caution has come out. We've had an incident elsewhere on the track, it would appear. Let's see what happened, Ken.
Huge wreck in a turn 2. We saw a lot of drivers getting around to prevent themselves from being involved in that. Seemed to be Alex Princeton in the 5 that was involved in this one. Also Dave Fugue in the 04. They seem to go around. The 04 was able to save it, but not enough for the 5. He backs it up into the outside wall. And as soon as the caution was coming out, I looked at all of those drivers around them. Just the drivers in the main pack trying to scramble to get around and make sure they're not involved late in the running like we have seen already early. You see that huge pack behind Princeton and Fugue, and you see them all just trying to stick to the inside to prevent hitting that 5 car. And Alex Princeton, another victim to Richmond and getting turned as the tensions will continue to rise. Like I said at the top of the broadcast, here's an in-car cam. This was going into turn 1.
I got to commend the quick thinking by Alex Princeton. You'll notice when he slides up the banking and gets stuck up near this wall, he stays on the brakes and keeps himself from rolling down that banking. If his car had gone down the track at all, that could have easily collected 4 or 5 more cars. But he had the quick wits to get on the brakes, stay at the top of the banking, don't roll. And in doing so, he saved his night as well as everybody behind him. So amazing job by Alex Princeton with that recovery. And a few cars making their way down pit road. Looks like we got John Delaney, Bryson Hixenbaugh finally making his way down pit road for the first time since lap 18. And the 7 car, Wayne Grassy, is the 7 cars stayed out. I apologize. And that's going to change up the running order quite a bit. I mean, 7 cars staying out on the track. That means that in the short remaining time we have in this stage, less than 30 laps, Bryson Hixenbaugh, who was your leader, now has 7 cars to try and work through in that short time, Ken.
Yeah, it was Hixenbaugh, Petrucco, which were the 2 drivers who hadn't pit yet ever since the drop of the green flag, and then a little bit of a mixed-in batch with some of the drivers who did pit with the group of Wayne Grassy, and those drivers followed behind on that last yellow flag, on that yellow flag where they all pitted, and we had that split between the 2. So it was a mix between Hixenbaugh, Petrucco, and the guys behind. Most notably, Joseph Lester also took a trip down pit road, so he will join that group with the fresh tires coming to this next restart. So you see now the drivers who stayed out, the 7 cars who will be at the front of this field who would decide to stay out now. They didn't have as much laps on their tires as, of course, Hixenbaugh or Petrucco, so they have enough to at least hold on for now. As we have, you see the 47 of William Boyvert. Will be leading this field. Wayne Grassy in a 7th. 217 to Jack Durham will hit pit road as well. He will get his service. Kevin Steele will be one of the playoff drivers to be in 3rd at the moment. He's currently the 2nd playoff driver in this group at the moment. Kevin Steele had a rough run at Darlington last week, got involved in the first yellow, and really that did not help his race whatsoever. You see the stats right here. Ever since the drop of the green flag, he's picked up a lot of spots. He's been up 3 actually, but he has been at low 14th, so he's been pretty far down the grid before getting all the way back, and a P3, at least where he started, is a good gain nonetheless. 3 spots, 3 more points on some of the other guys around him.
I'll tell you what, how about William Boyvert in his league debut? He's going to be leading the pack through the strategy of staying out. I believe he was one of the cars that pitted on the prior caution, So he does have pretty decent tires. They might not be the freshest of the field, especially since we had some guys come down pit road, but they're going to be comparable. He's got that inside preferred line. He's going to be able to control the field as we now got the 1 to go signal. Let's see, can the rookie keep the lead and maintain it and hold off the league veterans like Wayne Grassy, Kevin Steele, Eric Wineland?
And can he hold off the playoff drivers behind him? In his debut, he's surrounded by drivers with the red banners. Of course, with the exception of Wayne Grassy, he is still a playoff driver nonetheless. But you see all those red banners and red splitters and red spoilers around him. So he's got a lot of playoff drivers and a lot of experienced racers in this series to battle with going to the green flag. It's not going to be Hicksonball at the front of the field this time. It's going to be the 47 and the 7 of Wayne Grassy that'll lead them through row number 1. Pace car will come off pit road. We are green on a restart, and a lot of drivers fanning out. Still 2 wide as Wayne Grassy almost went 3 wide. Kevin Steele looked for it.
A lot of tire spin off that 7 machine, Ken. He got the field bunched up massively, almost collecting the 31 car when they went nearly 3 wide, like you mentioned. And all of this chaos going on, and look at that. There's the 47 car driving off into the sunset, both figuratively and literally as it's getting darker here at the track. And, man, he's got quite a gap. Look at that. He's built up 0.8 seconds, now 0.9 seconds going into turn 1. He is driving away from him with these guys battling, and they're still 2 wide. That's exactly what he wants to see, Ken.
Yeah, when they're battling around right behind you in your rearview mirror, you got to be all smiles, knowing that you'll be gaining more time as they're now almost 3 wide. Joseph Lester looked for that opening, but it was not enough to send it all the way to the inside. He will look now to the 31 and try to get that position, go little by little at the moment. And we still have 2 wide for second place. The 83 of Adam Benefiel will be to the inside of Wayne Grassy, easily taking that spot. We've got 2 drivers in their first start, still making great runs already.
He got a little loose coming out of the corner. We've seen that earlier in the race. And now getting the good run through the corner right into the bumper of Wayne Grassy. They're not done battling. And behind them, Eric Wineland and Joseph Lester are catching up while battling themselves. So a lot of action around this track. And this stage is coming to an end. We're on lap 60 of 80. They know it's go time. And these playoff drivers, they need these points. Any points they can get are valuable. So they're going to be pushing this car as hard as they possibly could. Joseph Lester now challenged by Bryson Hicksonball on the high side. Can Bryson make a pass on the outside? We haven't seen too much of that tonight. He's going to try to make it happen as he is at his quarter panel now. A little bit of contact with the bike, but they're going to keep it straight as now they might single file out. No, Bryson Hicksonball still on the top, Ken.
Lester and Hicksonball being the drivers that went down pit road the last time by, so obviously their fresh tires are playing to their advantage. But Hicksonball doing a first that we've seen all race long. Contact between Lester and Wineland to the back bumper, and almost could have collected Hicksonball as the 31 was washing up the track. Luckily, no harm, no foul. They'll stay green, and nothing else will be resulted from that. But meanwhile, we've got the 47 still at the front of this field. The 83 got back by the 7, and that gap is no more. You see the onboard with the 83, now just a couple of car lengths between the 2.
A couple of car lengths indeed, and closing as they go into the corner. The 83 seems to be a little bit quicker on entry, and he's running a little bit lower on that yellow line. That's a bit of a risk at a track like this when the apron can so easily spin you out. Now looking to the inside of the leader. He got to the quarter panel, got a little bit of that side draft, and now as they exit turn 4, he is going to clear the leader and take P1 for himself with only 16 to go in this stage, Ken.
And we saw this at Dover just a couple of weeks back, where the drivers in their first starts in this series already performing at the level of all the veterans here in this field. We saw it at Dover with Cecil Green and F5 Motorsports, Victor Williams, also Tanner Love. Those drivers at F5 Motorsports put on a show for us at Dover and put the challenge to drivers like Hicksonball and like some of the other veterans that we see in this field. So the 83 WR1 Chevrolet Camaro will be at the front of this field with the 47 behind. Adam Benefiel running with Team Conti in his start here in the Galaxy Cup Series. We're seeing a long line, though, behind them. This is Delaney. This is the battle for 10th. And then on back to Hickenbottom, Zach Probst, Cameron Caldwell, the 17 of Christopher Hamann, who picked up a lot from after getting some of that damage in the last wreck.
Yeah, he's on his way back up the field, getting a bit of a recovery made here. Not too much time left in the stage, but once we get that stage yellow, bunch the field up, that's going to put him even closer to the competition ahead so he can continue his march forward. Right now, you're looking at Cameron Caldwell on the inside of him, getting a little bit tight there. Almost door checking him, but they managed to keep it separated. Now, under fire from the car behind. We're riding on board now as he's going to make the lunge into the corner. A little bit too close for my comfort, but man, these guys seem to be in their element, right up on the bumper, right next to each other, giving it all they've got, Ken.
And a lot of drivers being patient with their moves. You see the 162, you're still on board with him. You see the 17 now to the side of his door, so he will go to the inside. Hickenbottom will also follow suit, and Matthew Woods. So just like the theme that we talked about, getting trapped to the outside, as soon as you lose one spot, when the driver's right behind that line, there'll still be a lot more to follow and try to take your position away, as you have no other choice but to try to find some sort of opening or try to make some momentum happen on the outside to be able to get that position back, or at least stay for the moment where you are. It's been 1.5 seconds now for the race lead. The 47 has now fallen to third at the likes of Hickenbottom. So Hickenbottom with those fresh tires, making the most of it and slowly catching up to that 83 as we get to the end of stage one.
He's got a few laps to do it. We're on lap 71, coming to lap 72 out of 80 for the stage. With the rate that he's closing, I think it's going to be close, but he's definitely going to get there. Now, the question is, once he does get there, can he make the pass? Richmond's a tough track to pass at. It's very one lane. The bottom lane is very dominant. We've seen Bryson Hickenbottom make a pass on the high side earlier, but that was only with the advantage of fresh tires. Once he gets up to this 47, his tires are going to have some time on him, and he's not quite going to have the grip that he had earlier on in the run here. So it's going to be a bit of a battle, and in that lap, the gap really didn't close much. So the 83 machine definitely holding his own, and the 17 dropped back a bit that last lap. Had a little bit of a bobble perhaps, but he is dropping down the running order. Now the 16 looking to the inside as he's going to get a decent run into 3 and 4, possibly bring that 20 machine of Danny Myatt in tow. He will down on the bottom, so possibly something wrong with that 17 machine as he's dropping through the grid.
And 17 has been trapped on that outside just for a couple of laps now, and that has allowed a lot of drivers to get to the bottom. Brian Mabry also thought about it as well, and he will now peek his nose to the inside as Hammond continues to drop spots. He will fall at least to 16th place as Danny Myatt got by, but Ryan Samuelson got involved in one of the incidents, but he's already back up here, and he's already got his way to at least the top 10, or at least to the top 15. He's still sitting 13th, but on the road to the top 10, he's slowly catching up to the drivers up ahead, which all the way follows through the top 10. Matthew Woods, Delaney, Hickenbottom, Probst, Cam Caldwell, and Kevin Steele, Eric Wineland, a long train of cars from 6 on back, but it's all the top 5 pretty much separated from there on out.
Bryson Hickenbottom has closed the gap. He got to the rear bumper of the leader. The question is, can he make the pass? I mentioned earlier, it's very hard to pass here. The bottom line is dominant, and the 83 we've seen as we ride on board with him is really doing a phenomenal job of sticking to that yellow line. I've noticed he is getting closer to the apron than almost anybody else on the track, and his car seems to just be sticking down there. So it's going to be tough for Bryson Hickenbottom to try to make something happen, and I don't think Bryson would be willing to move somebody for the stage point, especially when he's got the points cushion he has. But it's going to be a battle nonetheless. He's going to give it everything he has, and he's getting a great run coming out of turn 2. Down the back straightaway, he is going to stay on the throttle now, looking low to the 83's quarter panel. Now at his door and out of the corner, he is clear into the lead.
Hickenbottom back to the lead on an easy pass in 3 and 4 with just 2 laps to go left into stage 1. Until we get to lap 80 and we get to the end of that lap, we'll have the top 10 cross the start-finish line, and from then the yellow flag will come out. We'll re-rack and hopefully see some drivers down pit road as well in the meantime, and then we'll have them re-rack, get a restart very, very soon, and then we'll continue our trump to lap 230. Now the white flag of the stage is out. Hickenbottom will be at the front of this field, and you just mentioned, Andre, if he will have enough time, and he certainly did. He picked all of that up within a couple of laps. Here's a little battle further back between Hickenbottom and Probst. This battle is for 9th right there, and Hickenbottom just letting that outside roll as you get to the start-finish line at the end of stage 1. Hickenbottom will take stage 1. Adam Benefield falls just short. You'll see the rest of the field, 3rd, 4th, 5th. That's the 47, the 7, and the 9 of Joseph Lester. The rest of the field will follow suit. Very quick to get to the start-finish line here at Richmond. And we'll get the yellow flag. So stage 1 winner. And the points goes to the driver already locked into the round of 12.
And I gotta say, I'm impressed by the rookies. P2, P3 in their first league debuts at a track like this. That is absolutely nothing to be disappointed with. And I think they're going to have something, man. If they can get these cars dialed in a little bit more as the night goes on, they potentially have the ability, the speed to challenge Bryson Ixenbaugh, who's been so dominant tonight and in previous weeks. So it's definitely going to be interesting, Ken. And now they're going to be making their way down pit road.
Probably another time where we'll see the rest of the field behind the race leader go down pit road. We've already had our couple of shots at some drivers staying out and making some different moves, but here everyone will make the same behind Ixenbaugh, so everyone will be behind there to get their fresh set of tires and of course get some fuel along the way that they've wasted through this run. And we saw just differing runs throughout this first stage. We saw the semi-long green flag run. We just had an average run, about 16 laps, and the yellow came out. And then from on then, the cautions were breeding the cautions. We had so many yellows from there on out. And then now we had this long run to end stage 1. Remember, we're going all the way to lap 230 to end stage 2. So it's a long way through, as now the drivers will be on pit road. Ixenbaugh will be out first.
The 83 is going to lose a few spots this stop. He actually missed his stall, had to put it in reverse. And now as everybody drives by him, he is remaining in his stall. So it's possible he accrued a penalty of some sort. Perhaps just had some business to deal with outside of the car, but he is sitting on pit road. A disastrous stop for a podium position stage driver, unfortunately. And now, Ken, we can have a word with our stage 1 winner, Bryson Ixenbaugh, as he's safely off pit road. How about you bring him in here?
Bryson, welcome to the 3Y TV booth. You got a copy with us, first of all?
Yeah, I got you.
All right, Bryson, well, you took the win at Darlington last week. You got all the points from there. You're locked into the round of 12, and you add on to your tally with a stage 1 win here at Richmond. First of all, just go over your feelings with the car tonight and how that's been treating you over the course of this first run.
It's pretty good. There's cold tires this week affecting the short run. It's real loose for 5 laps that everybody's fighting with that, but it settles in nicely, and it's got pretty good speed in it this week. I'll see how me and Benefield race later. I think that he's probably better, but I had a little bit fresher tires there coming to the end of the stage.
And as right now in the booth, we're just mentioning the differed runs between this stage, where you had an average run, then you had a lot of short runs with the yellows in the way, and then you had this long run to end stage 1. Going into stage 2, do you have the same feeling this will repeat, or you think we might see something else going down the road?
I think that if we can get through the first 5-10 laps, we'll probably get a good long run in here for stage 2. It seems like people settle in a little bit after the restart and get the cars under control with the cold tires and everything warmed up and all ready.
All right, Bryson, well, we wish you luck out there at the rest of this race and here on out through stage 1. I know you've already put on a great performance, but we hope to see you continue to do so over the course of the night.
Thanks, guys. Hope to put on a good show tonight.
And Bryson Ixenbaugh out of the booth, your stage 1 winner, as you just get the 1 to green signal. Update on Adam Benefield in the 83. He will be 22nd after that pit stop. Andre, you were covering the lengthy pit stop for that 83 team. He will now fall all the way back. Still in the lead lap, of course, and he still has time to gain, but it's going to be a lot of drivers to get all the way back up from where he finished the stage in 2nd. So that'll leave the 47 William Boisberg to start on the outside of row 1. And we'll still have the drivers that were battling within this top 5. Wayne Grassi on the outside of row 2. And Joseph Lester on the inside, where we've seen him gain a lot of spots, but we've yet to see him take over the race lead. It'll be exciting to see if he's able to do so, at least through this run. Pace cars down pit road. The 63 and the 47 will lead them back to the restart on the beginning of stage number 2. All the way to 230 we go.
And Joseph Lester to the inside of the 47, already trying to get up into P2. He has had a lot of speed tonight and almost 3 wide as cars are going sideways on the backstretch. The 9 got really loose. That jumbled him up quite a bit. Everybody kept it under control. That's going to put Joseph Lester back to 3rd. You know, I just said he's had a lot of speed tonight, but it seems like maybe that speed is coming up. Oh, Cameron Caldwell goes around in front of everybody. The 7 is involved. The 48 is involved. Now the 6, John Delaney piling up. The 30 car. This is half the field, Ken.
Huge wreck involving a lot of the drivers that were up there through this field. We'll take a replay. This was battling behind Joseph Lester for 4th between Wineland and the 12. And another case of just getting into another driver and a hard hit to the outside wall for the 7 and Wayne Grassi. I saw some drivers also getting collected under the apron. Those drivers also getting some damage from this as well. This is the onboard cam from the 83. He had a long way to watch for all these drivers getting piled in. This is the view from the racecraft.
This has got to be a terrifying sight coming into the corner. The smoke, the carnage, everybody is going everywhere, scattering, and he made the smart decision to try and get to the bottom of the track where he was able to steer clear of it. That could be the break that the 83 needed after that unfortunate pit stop. That's going to be a lot of positions for him to grab, as now we're on board on the gyro cam with Rich Petrucco in his onboard sight of what happened in this wreck, similar to the 83, diving to the bottom, but unfortunately for him, it didn't work out quite as well. He got tagged, it spun him around, possibly made contact with another car after that, so he's got to have a bit of damage to fix that down.
Yeah, it was a two-part story, up against the wall and then all the way to the apron. Obviously, you see the 7 going up into the wall, Cameron Caldwell, John Delaney, Matthew Woods. You see the 3 of Brian Mabry also get involved, but then he shoots down the racetrack, getting into the 27 of Rich Petrucco. And then obviously you saw from the 83's cam just all the carnage that was happening in front of him, just forcing him to go all the way to a stop. And this is the onboard from Cam Caldwell. You just there, gets the tap, and then just a passenger from there on out. Really no control over all the drivers getting into him after. And you see some drivers a little further behind. Randy Drumhiller got some damage as well. Preston McRae, who has been just the bystander of a lot of these wrecks, just sitting there behind a lot of the wreckage, and is just kind of waited for them to get everything situated so he can get back going. He's put himself to a stop pretty much every single time each yellow has been caused. He would go down pit road to get something else topped off, as well as the drivers with damage. But Andre, lots of drivers we saw that were at least with contention with the top 10. They're all now going to have a hole to dig out of for the rest of this race.
Yeah, and I'll tell you the other side of that coin is that it makes things a lot easier for drivers like Joseph Lester in that 9 machine. He's had a lot of speed, and as that was all breaking out, I was just going to say, I think some of that speed maybe came at the cost of stability. His car is fast, but it might be a bit of a glass cannon as it seems to be a little out of control, especially early on in the runs with the fresh tires and all of the oversteer that you might get. But now, with a lot of those guys that were in contention, that were challenging being involved in that wreck and having damage or having to drop back through the grid to get some of that damage fixed, he's going to have less pressure from behind, which means he can focus more on hitting his marks and catching these drivers ahead without worrying too much about the guys behind, which is going to do wonders for him if he does have an unstable setup. So I think Joseph Lester is going to be the one to watch coming up on this restart, Ken.
Yeah, Joseph Lester, very, very great moves for him. It's all been clean, and it's been smooth up this field. He's gained a lot ever since the drop of this green flag, and he's done a well job of keeping himself there, because we've seen some drivers, at least in a lot of other scenarios, where you can gain a lot of spots early, but then as soon as you gain them, you can lose them just as quickly as you gain them. And then we see that happen where they gain a lot of spots and then they fall through the running order. But fortunately, it has not been the case at all for the 9 of Joseph Lester, where he's been able to get all the way up to 3rd, and he's been able to maintain his spot for at least the rest of this run. And he'll have another shot at the inside of the 47. He had a look momentarily, but then he was not able to execute it perfectly. Hopefully this time he might have the shot and will be able to make this move and go to 2nd, trying to chase down the race leader, Bryson Hicksenball. And like Darlington, Andre, we're still seeing the 63 choosing his times to step on the gas pedal and go for the restart. We saw Darlington where sometimes he would go a little further down the straightaway. Sometimes he would even wait till the end of the corner in turn 4 to step on the gas pedal and go. We'll see what he does this time. And right off turn 4, he will go on the gas pedal. We're back on a restart on lap number 94. Clear the rest of the field, the 6 ball.
Bryson out to a commanding lead early on, just like before. The 47 got wide right there. That opened up the door for Joseph Lester in that 9 machine to get up into P2. Although now the 47 really pushing it into the corner, getting really close to the 9 car, but losing a little bit of momentum coming out of the corner. Behind them, you've got Eric Wineland, who had a lot of speed early on, but got checked up by that. move that was made right there. So we're going to see what he has, if he can stay in line and possibly close the gap to the cars ahead. Kevin Steele nearly going too wide, a little bit further back in the pack, you can see. That 162 machine also up on the high side for a minute, now falling back in line, single file. And behind them, another battle's breaking out. So these restarts are crazy, and you see this all the time, just battling all over the track. The 17 machine, you can see him there on screen. He had some issues earlier on, getting trapped on the high side. Now everything's single file. He seems to have a fair amount of speed. We're now riding on board with the 83 machine as he seeks to get around the 17. He's going to look low here, get to the quarter panel. No, he almost thought better of it. He got on the brakes, but then got back on the throttle once he seen the 17 check up. So that was some on his feet, quick thinking right there by the 83 to secure another position, as now he's trying to get around the 16.
Ever since that penalty, Adam Benefield has gone from 22nd to 11th. He just got past the 16 of Ryan Samuelson to move him up to 9th. Quick gains for that 83. He's going to go to the inside of the 162. I think the 162 just kind of let him by, saying, hey, you're quicker now. Just go for it at the moment. The 53 update, he is now under the apron, just a little slow. Merging back to the racetrack, and how tough that is. Down the front straightaway. He almost had a meeting with the pit road attenuator at the entrance, but he will continue to run cleanly. You just see how close it is, and on board, you see how just tough it is for the 53 to get around, as we're now looking back to the race leaders. And I was going to mention this a little earlier, Andre, but when we saw that 47 dip low, we saw the 9 block. I think the 9 might have noticed some of the cautions that have come out and the result of drivers getting into the back of other drivers and sending them around. So that 9 was probably waiting for that to happen, or expecting it to happen, and trying to block all the way down the racetrack to make sure it does not happen between those two. And it's been a gap of 0.8 seconds now to 0.9 between him and your race leader, Hixenbaugh. But meanwhile, the 83 has picked up the 7th. He's now going to go to his next victim in the 20 of Danny Myatt.
Danny Myatt is one tough customer. He's not an easy driver to pass, but regardless, the 83 has so much momentum out of these corners. I've said it before, I'll say it again. You watch this 83 and you see how close to that yellow line he's getting. There's something with that setup. He can just send it into those corners and it sticks. So fantastic drive so far all night for the 83, even working through his penalty, trying to work his way back up through the field. He's pretty much done it in no time at all. I mean, we're still early on in this stage, and he's working his way up. I think by the time these laps start to wind down, you're going to see him back up inside the top 5.
So it's a 4-car train right there, starting with Wineland and Hickenbottom, Myatt, Benefield, and then right behind him, Kevin Steele and Zach Probst. It's a long line between those drivers, and then there's a 2-car tandem between the 9 of Lester and the 47 of William Boisvert. Those drivers are both together, the 2 Chevrolet Camaros. Boy, it is 3 Chevrolet Camaros occupying the top 3. Wineland, the only Mustang with Damaris Hickenbottom right behind him, and a lot of drivers in this train. So already in the long green flag run, we're not just seeing like what we saw at Darlington, where we saw a lot of drivers just spread out between themselves, and we did not see a lot of trains of cars moving together. But now it seems to be a little different in this case, where a lot of drivers are kind of bunching up in smaller groups.
A lot of smaller groups indeed, Ken. Right now, the 9 and the 47 are pretty much engaged in a battle of their own. It's a 2-car battle. They're bumper to bumper, but they pretty much have nobody behind them. And ahead of them, Bryson Hixenbaugh is just kind of driving off into the sunset on his own. And then behind them, you got another group here. You got Danny Myatt, Damaris Hickenbottom in that 09. And behind them, look at that. There's the 83 machine in P7 trying to get back up inside that top 5 as he's going to tag along behind the 20, make that pass on the bottom of Damaris Hickenbottom. And whoa, the 20 car getting way loose. He manages to gather it up. That was an impressive save. Look at that 83 down on that yellow line. I cannot believe how close he is getting to that line, corner after corner. Now getting clear of Damaris Hickenbottom and setting his sights firmly on Danny Myatt as he tries to work his way back up towards the front.
And he took great advantage of the 09 going to the high side as he was battling with Danny Myatt. But here comes the 83 back to the inside. The 09 going to look to do the same, and he will try to fight with Danny Myatt. It's not going to be as easy for the 09, though. They're going to still be side by side at turn 1. But the 83 moving himself into the top 5. He's going to now try to catch up to the back bumper of Wineland. It's not a long road, but that 83 is quick on these longer runs.
The 20 is getting loose again coming out of turn 2, so maybe his tires are getting a little bit hot. You know, when you drive these cars really hard and you push them and you start sliding around, that'll heat your tires up. And I've noticed that 20 is getting really loose. So he might have to maybe take a step back and cool his equipment down. But ahead of him, man, here comes the 83 making short work of Eric Wineland, passing him like he's standing still, and now right back to the bottom of the track, continuing his trek towards the front, firmly in P4. He's 5 seconds behind the leader, but only 2 seconds behind Boisvert, who's up there ahead of him. And again, these two rookies, they seem to be pretty similar in pace. I think maybe that 47 machine's getting held up a little bit by Lester, as Lester's pace has kind of fallen off in this long run. But again, even though you're being held up by the guy in front of you, it's so hard to pass here, especially when you get loose like that coming out of the corner. That's not doing anybody any favors. So having a tough time getting around this 9, but still a lot of speed for that 47 machine regardless. But pretty soon, man, he's going to have somebody breathing down his neck. He's going to have that 83 machine right there as he is closing the gap quickly. Now only 1.2 seconds between them.
And another point to bring up about racing the Cup cars here at Richmond Raceway, you're not equipped with the high downforce package that you would have at the 1.5 milers, at the 2-mile tracks, and of course the super speedways that we saw at Daytona just a couple of weeks back before this playoff started. However, you do have these short track setups with the lower spoiler and the lower downforce setup and a lot more power under the hood. So we're seeing a lot of drivers getting loose off of certain corners. Most notably, it's usually off of turn 2, where you're kind of progressing from the banking all the way to the back straightaway, which is just completely flat. And we see that take into effect, and we've already seen it happen a couple of times. You're riding on board with the 17 of Christopher Hamann as he just got around the 38 of Brandon Pierce. The 38 involved in one of those incidents. You see the damage to the front and the back bumper. He's pretty much got no back bumper on that Toyota Camry, and he's going to continue to try and troop on as the 16 of Samuelson, the 04 Fugue, and the 30 of Drumhiller will follow suit. But if you look all the way back to second place, we have a huge 3-car trifecta with Lester, the 47 of Boisvert, and Benefiel in the 83. He's caught up to them quickly. The 47 was trying to pounce on that 9, but yet to do so as the 83 makes a move to the outside of third.
And he's going to make the pass successfully right before the yellow flag flew. So we got a caution now on track. We're going to get to identify exactly what happened, but I can confirm the 83 did have that position before the yellow flag. So that could be huge when it comes to this restart, depending on how everything shuffled down on pit road. But we got a replay here, Ken. We're going to see exactly what happened. Looks like it was the 16, a little bit too much rear brake maybe as he slides into the corner, a little bit of contact from the car behind. Ultimately going to gather it up without too much damage. I'm not sure we can say the same thing for the guy that hit him, but we're now on board with Brian Samuelson.
It's just a case of getting loose, going into the corner, just trying to apply the brakes smoothly to get in, and then it's just not enough to keep the car straight. And he goes around off turn 1 and 2. Luckily, no one else involved, so he will be the sole car that will trigger this yellow, and not necessarily damage, just those flat spotted tires that will have to go down pit road to get serviced anyway. But regardless, he'll have the rest of this field with the lead lap car going down pit road. You see the 04 Big Fugue making that evasive maneuver and was able to get around. He reacted quickly on time. But now, if you look to pit road, we're seeing a lot of chaos and a lot of drivers getting their service with the 83 and the 63. Here's the battle off pit road, and Joseph Lester pounces on both the race leaders, and he will be into the first place, and he'll lead the field on this next restart. What a pit stop.
That was an absolutely insane pit stop for Joseph Lester, but also a little bit more pit road drama as the 63 sort of pinned the 83 down towards the inside wall coming out of the pit. So that was definitely interesting to see. I got to say, though, going back to that incident, that yellow flag, that 04, Dave Fugue, he made an insanely great evasive maneuver. I thought he had hit him. I thought with the angle he was at when he went around, there was no way he was going to not hit him. But he darted that car right and then managed to actually keep it from hitting the outside wall, keep it from spinning, kept it straight, and got around him. That was absolutely insane. But back to the race at present, man, that is huge for Joseph Lester. This is the first time he's led all night long, and now he can finally play offense or defensively instead of offensively. So maybe he's picked something up from Bryson. Maybe he's learned how to manipulate these restarts. We're going to have to see if he can get that jump and get a bit of a gap between him and the cars behind. And trust me, he will have a challenge from the cars behind. He's got Bryson Hicksonbaugh. He's got the 47 machine. He's got the 83, Adam Benefield. These are drivers that have shown to be wildly consistent, wildly fast all night long, and it's going to be up to Joseph Lester to keep that first position from them.
And Joseph Lester probably had a sigh of relief as soon as that yellow came out, because that was a tense situation between him, the 47, and the 83. The 83 was getting by the 47, was just about to get to the outside or possibly the inside of the 9 car, as that 9 car was probably just pressure to keep himself up there and try to prevent himself from getting a bump on the back bumper, and that could have sent him around. He's got a little bit of damage back there, but not too much to really affect his performance. But a great run for that 9 car. I think he was really hoping the yellow would come out soon enough so the field will be frozen, and with that pit stop, he will be leading this field. So an even better result for that 9 car. But back to the 83 of Adam Benefield. Going back to the notion that he is on Team Conti, you know, what a team that is, with Michael Conti being the head of it all. I mean, if you think about Michael Conti, you're one of the veterans in the NASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing series, and one of the more experienced drivers on the iRacing service. And being part of that team, and of course, a lot of fast drivers, and Benefield showing that already tonight. Going to be a different lineup to row number 1. The 47 will still be on the outside, but we'll have a different leader. That would be Joseph Lester. Bryson Hicksonbaugh, you have to find him right behind the first row with the 83 of Benefield. I'm excited to see how this restart will play out, especially with all these 4 drivers, as Lester gets loose on the initial restart, and he will be around, and no yellow will come out. Looks like the rest of the field will follow by. Oh my goodness, bizarre moment there for the 9 car.
What on earth happened right there? And no yellow flag either, Ken. This is staying green for the time being. I think he just got loose on the apron. He touched the apron, and that was all she wrote. We're going to take a look at a replay here. But I am shocked, absolutely shocked, that the leader who can control the restart, he doesn't have to worry about anybody going before him, would make a mistake like that. And it's just really unfortunate to see. We know he's been fast all night. I think we've all kind of been, you know, we're supposed to be impartial as commentators, but we've all been kind of pulling for him as he's shown a lot of speed. And now this happens. So now the yellow flag has flown, and it would appear to be the 31 car involved. Not exactly sure what happened. We're going to take a look at a replay, Ken. Let's see if we can identify this.
This is a 31 of Wyland. This is just as quickly as we were covering that spin by Joseph Lester on the restart there. But this is what happened with 31. This is going into turn 1 and 2. Must have been the same situation that happened to Ryan Samuelson, and it is just going around, and too much rear brake on the race car just sent it right around, enabled that back end to slip loose, and there's no way of saving it going into the corner on the banking. Here's a little more an in-depth look on the inside of the race car as it was going into turn 1, and once again still falling victim to 1 and 2, but actually a victim in 3 and 4 as well with Lester there.
You know, I love that onboard shot because it really shows how finicky these cars are. These drivers are not bad drivers, you know, but when these mistakes happen, you can see his car is spinning before he even gets turning back left. Like, he's turning right while the car is still straight, and it's still spun to the left. These cars are so temperamental with these short spoilers, especially when it comes to brake input. If you just get on the brakes a little bit too hard, that's what happens. The car wants to spin around on entry. So that's kind of where you make a decision. Do you change your brake bias to be a little bit slower around the track, but also more stable on corner entry, or do you risk it? Do you have your brake bias a little bit more unstable, but potentially faster? And I think we've seen that a few of these drivers have chosen the fast brake bias that is going to be a little bit worse for them down the line. Just unfortunate for the 31 car, Eric Wineland. He's been looking to have a good run. He's been really frustrated with a lot of the goings-on lately, a lot of unfortunate results for him. And tonight, I really thought he was going to have something. I mean, he still might. He didn't get much damage from that. He's still in the race. But definitely a huge setback. And we saw last week that he had to race his way up through the field. Not once, but I believe on 2 separate occasions. So we know Eric Wineland is capable of it as long as he can get that thing patched up and back out on the track. But still, it's making his night a little bit tougher than it needs to be, Ken.
Delaney got the free pass as that yellow was coming out, so he will be back on the lead lap. He was 1 lap down right as that yellow came out, so he will be back to 15th. He gained some spots on some of the drivers on pit road. Of course, Eric Wineland, Joseph Lester, Jack Durham, those drivers went down pit road, so Delaney will shoot up to 15th as he's now down pit road. Maybe we'll lose those spots back up, but nonetheless, he will still be on the lead lap as soon as we get this restart very soon. So with Joseph Lester and his incident on the restart, 47 William Boisvert will be on the race lead. As soon as the 9 car went around and no yellow came out, I was very excited to see the top 3 battling. At least I thought it was going to be 4, but deducted to 3, but I was seeing them all close together. There was really no gap between all 3 of them, and it's always been a great run between them, and maybe we'll still see that play into effect over the next restart.
Absolutely. I'm going to bring Rich Petrucco in. He's down at the infield care center. I see him down there. We're going to have a word with him. Mr. Petrucco, copy?
I do. How you guys doing?
We're doing good. So an unfortunate incident early on in the race and then more chaos afterwards. Some might say that's just short track racing, but walk me through your perspective on what's going on out there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could say it's short track racing. I don't know. I mean, with mine, I don't know why the guy behind me decided to block on lap 44. It was a great idea, but kind of is what it is. I got moved and then got T-boned when I was stopped up top. Had a minute and a half worth of damage, and the right rear was all messed up. And the second incident, it is what it is. Wreck in front of me. I thought I was going to make it through, and just barely didn't. So rough night, but kind of is what it is, and we'll move on to Bristol.
Now, you mentioned moving on to Bristol. Is that a track you're particularly excited for? You got some strategy up your sleeve?
Normally, I would love Bristol, but based on tonight's going, I'm not so sure. So I guess we'll see what happens.
I don't think anybody can blame you for that outlook, but we're sorry to see your race end the way it did tonight, and we're hoping to have some good results in these following weeks there, Rich. Thanks for your time. All right, that was Rich Petrucco involved in 2 separate incidents. The second one, of course, ending his race. And during that interview, the race got underway. The 47 taking the point up into P1. The 83, Adam Benefield, behind him. And in 3rd place, the driver who's been so dominant all night long, Bryson is approaching.
That 47 did not get a great gap between himself and the rest of this field, and the 83 got by the 63 of Hixenbaugh and will now try to challenge for the race lead once again and take over once again as he did in stage 1 right before Hixenbaugh got by right at the end to secure the stage 1 win. So all 3 of these guys within less than a second, but looking back to another driver who's hidden within less than a second is Danny Myatt in the number 20 car. He's not too far behind this 3-car train, so he will at least try to look out for the drivers ahead of him, and he will possibly can pounce on any moment that, let's say, any of the drivers in the top 3 get into something or one of them slows down dramatically due to maybe getting loose or possibly battling or even an incident down the road. But we got a battle for the race lead heating up. The 83 will look to the inside of the 47, and with that being the preferred line, he will have it at the line and most likely going into turn 1. Hixenbaugh not following. He actually stays a little bit farther behind.
He did stay a little bit further behind, but he made sure to stay low, and now he's at the 47's door. He's going to try to complete the pass through 3 and 4, and he's actually going to get cleared before they even enter. So that's going to give Hixenbaugh a little bit of a better chance to enter. He didn't have to enter quite as low as he might have otherwise had to. And now it's going to be a battle between the 83 and the 63, as the 83 Adam Benefield trying to maintain the lead that he had earlier. You got to imagine that feels pretty good for that 83 machine. Dropped all the way back to the back of the pack. Adam Benefield had to sit in his pit stall, accruing a penalty of some sort, and now, not too long later, he's back up front. I think that's kind of sending a message to the rest of this field saying, hey, this is the guy to beat. This is the guy with the hot setup, and if you want to win, you're going to have to try to do something about him.
And Hixenbaugh might have something to say about that. He is slowly gaining on that 83 as these laps start to wind down, and you reckon, Andre, this might be the battle to watch for as the race continues to go on. It's just a 0.3 seconds between the two, and it went down even more. It was a 0.333, now just a 316. So it continues to dwindle as the top 2. Those setups are completely catered to this nighttime setup, and it is working perfectly for those drivers at the moment. William Boisvert, however, fell to 3rd, and he's now falling at just 1 second behind Hixenbaugh, or at least 1 second behind the race leader. Still almost a second between him and Hixenbaugh in the 63. Danny Myatt hit bottom, as we're seeing a lot of drivers are still in this long line of train that we're seeing with a lot of drivers. There's not many battles going on. You see the 9 of Leicester trying to recover from what happened with that restart where he spun on the apron, and he's kind of had a struggle, but he's got around Brandon Pierce, going to try to get around Hammond, but at least he's back in the top 10.
I think what Leicester needs to focus on is consistency. We know he's got speed. He was up there dicing it out with the leaders and making a good showing of it. We know that he's got speed. We know he's a good driver. Unfortunately, just a number of incidents and small mistakes that held him back there. So if he can just really get his head in the game, focus on consistency, he is a contender and a definite threat as this stage progresses and as the race progresses. So we're going to keep an eye on him as he tries to work his way back up through the field. You can't really complain about being back up in the top 10 either. I mean, he's in P10 after that mistake, now up into P9 actually. So within the top 10, moving forward, it's about as good of a recovery as you could really ask to have. And, further towards the front here, we got Damaris Hickenbottom and Danny Myatt. We were talking about Danny Myatt earlier. And I tell you, I'm really impressed with that 09 machine, Damaris Hickenbottom. He's had 2 really good runs in a row now, week after week, as we ride on board now with Hickenbottom. And that nice blue roll cage, I love the looks of that thing, as he is following in the tire tracks of the 20 machine, trying to run him down. You can see just how low these drivers are getting it and just how much that banking is affecting them. I know the banking doesn't look like much, but when that gyro cam is activated where you saw right there, it really shows you there's more banking than you think. So interesting track we got here. But behind them, behind Damaris Hickenbottom, look at that. You got Kevin Steele sneaking into the picture up there in P6, and he is closing the gap ever so slowly lap after lap. We might have a 3-car battle right quick here for P4, Ken.
And back to Damaris Hickenbottom, you just mentioned that he had a great couple of runs going into this race, and he's continuing that trend tonight with a top 5 run at the moment. Consistency matters in the playoffs. Even if you're not able to get a win, even if you're not taking all the checkered flags, you are accumulating points over the course of these races. If you're racking these top 10s, top 5s, and so on, you're gaining points to the moment where you can gain a lot of drivers that are having worse days and are not as consistent over the course of these 3 races. And going into Bristol, if Hickenbottom can continue where he's at and his footing, he will have enough points to put himself into the round of 12 comfortably and not have to worry about being on the bubble or being a couple of points out of it or on the outside looking in. He'll have a good look and maybe in the top 10 or maybe in the top 5 maybe, and have enough points to stay there to the round of 12 and then work on from there. But consistency is always key, especially at tracks like these where you really have to wheel the car around, and it's much more about driver skill than it is relying on different factors in any races, because when you have the high downforce package, it helps you a little more with grip. It helps you a little more with turning the race car and being able to manhandle it around for 100% distance. Of course, the Galaxy Cup Series running 100% of the distance as the NASCAR Cup Series do in real life, and on the sim, still replicating that with this series. But consistency will still matter in the long run. As you saw the onboard shot with Myatt, he just brushed that inside wall, enough for Hickenbottom to go through to this top 5. He's up to 4th now.
An amazing move, and like I said, that 20 car doesn't seem to be the most stable. It seems like once he gets his tires hot and starts pushing the car, it kind of starts to slip out from underneath him, and I think that's what happened on corner exit. He had a lot of pressure from Damaris in that 09 car, and he was probably driving it into the corners a little bit deeper than his tires were really wanting him to. So getting into the wall a little bit there, like you said, Damaris Hickenbottom now comfortably into P4, and capitalizing on the misfortune of other drivers, I think, is a better way to put the good point that you were talking about earlier, where a lot of these playoff drivers are having bad nights right now. Look at John Delaney in P15, Josh Coppernall in 14th. You got Preston McRae in 22nd, Mabry in 21st. These are drivers that are not going to get too many points tonight if their night continues on the way that it has. So when you got a driver like Damaris Hickenbottom, who was a little bit closer to the cut line, that is helping him progress through the scoring pylon straight to the top and securing his position in the next round of, I believe it's the round of 12. So right now you see a really good battle going on between Joseph Lester and the 162 machine, swerving down the backstretch like Jean Girard and Ricky Bobby as they throw block after block. Now to the inside, here comes Joseph Lester at the quarter panel. Is he going to be able to drive it in deep enough to secure this position? The 162 giving him plenty of room. He gave him about 2 lanes there, very courteous. And now the 9 car is secure, and the 17 into the wall. The 5 having to make a quick evasive maneuver. now right back up against the bumper, but with more challenge from the 16 behind due to that speed he lost, Ken.
And Lester got into the top 10, got by Christopher Hahn and Alex Princeton, now adding Zach Probst to the list of drivers to get by, and now he's going to have to look a little bit further down the road to go up to the 44 of Kevin Steele, currently sitting 6th. So Joseph Lester still on the road back to the top 3 where he was during this run. At the 42 of Coppernaw has some issues. He is currently sitting down on the apron, and we'll take a replay to see exactly what was the cause of this. No yellow, but just went down the track, got into the grass, got into the inside wall, and then was able to keep it straight. Obviously, the reason keeping it straight was no yellow, but very peculiar situation here, Andre, and just further adding insult to injury for his night.
Good guy Josh Coppernall making sure that the inside retaining wall can do its job for the rest of this field. He's going to keep it straight and get back on the track. No caution, as you had mentioned. So an unfortunate mistake for him. That's going to set him back a little ways. But right now, looking back towards the front of the field, it's been a while since we looked up front, and it's the 83 who currently has quite a commanding lead, nearly half a straightaway now over Bryson Hixenbaugh, whose car looks a little bit more unstable out of the corners as his rear end sliding out a good few inches. Behind the 2 leaders, you've got the 47, William Boisvert. He's got about a 5-second gap to the cars ahead, dropping back but still securely on a podium position, and behind them is where the action is. Damaris Hickenbottom trying to separate himself from the 20 machine of Danny Myatt and the 44 machine of Kevin Steele. Unfortunately, not quite able to do so, as they are all separated, all 3 of those drivers, the 09, the 20, and the 44, all separated by about 2.5 car lengths each, remaining fairly stable, although Kevin Steele getting a good run through 3 and 4 that time, right up to the 20 car, and now challenging for P4, Ken.
Here's some more action on full display, like you just mentioned, with Danny Myatt and Kevin Steele. Hickenbottom just a little bit further up, so not really much of a battle between him and the 2 drivers behind. I'm sure he's looking in his rearview mirror and just making sure that they're all smooth and steady and not necessarily making more time, and he's able to stay up in front of these 2. And it'll only help more with the 20 of Danny Myatt and the 44 Kevin Steele. Still, if they go side by side, they'll still stay single file, though. As we go up to the front of this field, Adam Benefield continues to lead. He's now 0.946 seconds ahead of Bryson Hixenbaugh, who fell down from 0.333 seconds, now up to 1.1 as the 63 and the 83 both get around a lap car. The 53 of Preston McRae, now the leader gets around the 3 of Brian Mabry. So it will stay like that, 83, 63, 47 into 3rd. Lots of gaps here later in this race as we continue to go to stage 2.
A battle broke out between the 44 and the 20. They were bumper to bumper, working their way through turns 1 and 2, and then 3 and 4. The 44 got a little bit too aggressive into the corner. His rear end slid out on braking. He had to let off the throttle and give up a little bit of time. Now the gap between 4th and 5th is going to be about a car length and a half. The 44 gathering his momentum back up, trying to get back to Danny Myatt. And while all this is going on in front of them, there goes Damaris Hickenbottom off into the sunset, trying to catch up to the cars ahead, although he's got a good half a straightaway before he can catch up to those guys. Now the 44 regrouped, and he is back on the bumper of the 20 machine of Danny Myatt. This is probably the closest battle on the track right now, is behind them. It's a long gap to Joseph Lester, who's worked his way up into P7. He's on his own, nobody in front, nobody behind. Zach Probst behind him in P8. Behind them, you got a gaggle of cars, starting with Eric Wineland in P10 as he leads the 5 car and the 12 car. They are trying to go side by side into the corner, but they're going to think better of it. The 12 car lifts off the throttle, concedes the position, but coming out of the corner, back on the throttle, now to the quarter panel of the number 5 car. Again, going to think better of it. He's backing off. I'm noticing he has more speed on entry or on exit, but not quite as much speed on entry. So definitely a bit of a game of who has the better setup between the 5 and the 12. Behind them, it's the 17 in position 18. Or no, Cameron Caldwell is position 18, so he's a lap down, still racing these guys. Behind him, it's Christopher Hamann in position 11, And that 17 machine, a lot of adversity tonight. We've seen that it hasn't handled quite the way he'd want it to. Now under fire from the 16, who's going to get a big run down the straightaway, looking to the inside at the quarter panel. The 12 car ahead of them has gotten into the wall. That's going to check them up quite a bit, Ken.
And a huge battle right there between 10th on back. You just talked about Eric Wineland, and now he's all the way gained back after spinning on the racetrack and causing a yellow. He is now back up to the top 10. Alex Princeton will be behind, then Cameron Caldwell, Christopher Hammond, Ryan Samuelson, and a long train of other drivers that are still fighting for positions at least to gain some more points down the road. A lot of these playoff drivers, most notably, of course, Wineland, Hammond, Samuelson, and a lot of these drivers still trying to get points along the way. But meanwhile, we still have lap traffic now starting to take into place, which we haven't seen all night long, Andre. And the long green flag run taking into effect, as this is the first time we've really seen the leader get by any lap traffic. It's been maybe 1 or 2 cars spread out as we got a yellow on the track, lap number 165.
We're going to take a look and see what happened here. Can we identify this as the replay comes up? Looks like the 16 was involved, just going around, and I believe turn 2. Everybody's going to get around him safely on the outside. We're going to see exactly what initiated the spin. Could just be too much braking. Exactly. We've seen this time and time over and over again, Ken. Whoa, near miss with a 38 car, but just a little bit too much braking. Kick that rear end out, Ken.
Yeah, that 38 had a little bit of space between himself and Samuelson, and just the second time that Samuelson goes around in a turn 1 with too much rear brake, very, very loose going into that corner. I was not able to save it once again, so he causes the yellow on lap 165. And I was just talking about how the leaders are getting around lap traffic for the first time really tonight. It's now gone to waste, as we're going to be under yellow and re-rack the entire field. And behind the entire field, Alex Benefield will lead them down to pit road once again. I'm sure this long green flag run was enough to convince all of the drivers to go down for 4 tires and fuel. So we'll see if Benefield has a better pit stop this time around. And we're seeing a lot of drivers have their pit stops really show out, much like we saw with Joseph Lesser getting out first. So we'll see as everyone goes down for service.
Well, going back to that statement you made about getting around the lap traffic going to waste with this caution, in a way you're right, but in another way, I think the fact that they got to lap traffic and they had to deal with it for a little while is probably a good learning experience for a lot of the drivers in the field, because like you mentioned, this is the first time in 167 laps that we have gotten into lap traffic. So that kind of made it a bit of an unknown. How are these drivers going to respond? How courteous are they going to be? Obviously, when you're a lap down, you don't want to be too aggressive, but in the playoffs, especially if you're a playoff driver, maybe you're going to play it a little bit more defensive. You're going to put on your Ryan Newman hat and you're going to start throwing blocks. So now that these guys have dealt with lap traffic, they might be a little bit more prepared for it later on in the race, should we see a long green flag run.
And speaking of playoff drivers, if you're looking at the ticker right there at the top of your screen, you can differentiate the playoff drivers from the ones not in the playoffs and the one who's already advanced. Bryson Nixonball, his name colored in green to signify that he has advanced to the round of 12, and all the other playoff drivers are outlined in blue lettering. So if you see the names in blue, those are the drivers to watch for, and those are drivers that are mixed in with some of the splurge of non-playoff drivers in the mix. And those are the drivers with the red banners, red splitters, and red spoilers are rocking them through the rest of the playoffs, at least through the rest of this first round until we eliminate 4 drivers, and we'll continue on from there. So a phenomenal pit stop for the 83, a much better pit stop than what we saw earlier in this race when he had to stay an extra couple minutes or extra more seconds where he was just stopped on pit road and having to deal with a situation in that race car. But luckily, he still got that situated. He's got a better pit stop this time around that'll keep him in the lead. Hicks and Ball in the 47 we also had great pit stops as well. And we continue to see this through, Andre, where a lot of the drivers in the top 5, they seem to be staying stagnant. We're not seeing a lot of shifts between drivers in the top 5 and the drivers a little further back. We're just seeing 5th on back being the ones where you see a lot of drivers gain more positions or lose positions, but when it comes to this top 5, it's pretty much kind of comfortable. You're staying where you are.
Right. The top 5 has been pretty stagnant. I mean, it's remained mostly the same with some variation here and there. We've come off some tracks recently that you kind of see a revolving door for the lead. Daytona especially, you will see cars making passes for the lead every single lap almost, always new leaders, always passes. But you get to a track like this, and it is so hard to pass. We've already talked about it quite a bit. The bottom lane at this track is just a powerhouse. It's dominant. In real life, they would throw some traction compound up top to try and make the top a little bit more viable. Obviously, we don't have that in the game, and as a result, the bottom's where you want to be. And to make a pass on the high side means that you either have to have way better tires or you have to have a setup that is almost inhuman. So the lights are off on the pace car, Ken, and it's going to be the 63 and the 83. Adam Benefield, the leader, leading into the green.
Benefield and Hixenbaugh will be the two leaders going to the green flag. The 83 will mash on the gas pedal, and we are back on a restart on lap number 171. Still a long way to go till we get to lap 235 and signify the closure of stage 2. And already a quick move by the 47 on the fresh tires is going to get by Hixenbaugh to the inside as we got a spinner down the back. The 17 of Christopher Hamann is around on the back straightaway. He's able to lock it up, but the yellow flag comes out just as soon as we got that restart.
Man, I'll tell you what, that 47 machine made a bull lunge into second place, and it paid off because now he'll have a front row restarting position. We got the replay here. 17 just getting loose out of the corner, a little bit too much throttle perhaps. We've seen that a few times tonight, and that's what comes with this short track package. More horsepower, less downforce, and this is what's going to happen. You get on the throttle, it's a little too hard, your tires start to spin, and around you go. Luckily this time nobody else involved. The single car spin caution did come out to the benefit of the 17. If caution hadn't come out, that could have been absolutely disastrous. But a little bit of a checkup going into the corner, and I gotta wonder if maybe that is what initiated the almost lapse in concentration that kind of scared him into making a mistake. I've had that happen to me several times in races. I've seen it happen to other people, but luckily a caution, so he's going to be able to try and regroup, bunch up the field, and try to work his way back through.
And luckily for him, he's not going to go a lap down as a result. So he will be the last car sitting on the lead lap. Cameron Caldwell will be the first driver under 1 lap down. You see him trying to get around the field, at least getting that clearance. He's currently sitting 2 laps down. But while he's 2 laps down, he's also fighting in position with Wayne Grassi, Jack Durham as well. Those drivers, although they are laps down, if they are the same amount of laps down, they can still fight for position, therefore fighting for lucky dog spots as yellows come out, which will help them in turn go back to the lead lap and try to make something of their race from here on out. But there's still a long way to go to lap 400 as Benefield continues to lead, and he's led a good amount of this race already. And we'll take a look at least at the summary of what we're looking at right now currently in this race and what we've seen so far. So 173 laps under the 400 scheduled, now 174. We've seen a couple of cautions already through tonight. It's been more than usual, Andre. I'd say that this was expected, but still a little bit of a shock that we've seen so many yellows. But then again, it is short tracks.
Yeah, I can't say I'm as surprised as you are, Ken. It's Richmond. You see this a lot, even in real life. I mean, the NASCAR Cup Series, it's like the 40 best stock car drivers the country has to offer, and they still put on shows pretty similar to this. So it's a rough track. These cars are an absolute handful, and I think that's on full display tonight as we see a lot of drivers just losing the hang of the car, over braking, over throttle, just making these small mistakes that ultimately result in spins and cautions and a lot of yellow flags tonight. So definitely an eventful race, and an interesting thing about getting all these cautions is it's giving a lot of drivers a second, third, or even fourth chance. Behind the leaders, I'm looking, we got Joseph Lester, we got Zach Probst, we've got Damaris Hickenbottom, who all fell a little bit further back from the leaders. Now, again, on these restarts, Danny Myatt as well in that 20 machine, they're going to have another chance to try and pounce on the cars ahead, get the positions, and potentially work their way up into the podium. We know they've got speed. It's just a matter of getting that track position and having the opportunities present themselves. And with every restart comes a new opportunity, Ken.
Yeah, and that restart enabled the opportunity to open up for that 47 of William Boys, where he got by the 63 of Hixenbaugh. He will be on the outside of row 1 this time by, and it's always been a case of whether they've been able to clear themselves in second place, because the leader has always had great restarts to the point where they're able to clear the field significantly, and that obviously allows the driver in second place to kind of file in their own line, stay in a second place, but they still have to watch for the drivers on the inside of row 2 to make sure that they don't get a pass for that position on the bottom, and possibly could lead to a train of cars on the bottom, which could lose you a lot of spots further down the road. iRacing pace car comes down to pit road. We're going to restart on lap number 177, and the 83, like I just said, gets a huge start to the front of this field, and Hixenbaugh, the 47, will have to do battle into turn 1. Hixenbaugh will enable the inside, and it looked like that 47 let him go. I think he was expecting that move to the inside, and he's now got it. So he will be down the inside. Hixenbaugh to second. Danny Myatt will try to follow through as well.
Danny Myatt in tow of the 63 machine. That was an impressive restart by Hixenbaugh to get to the bottom of the 47. And kind of, you mentioned the 47 kind of let him go. Well, he certainly didn't want to do that. It's just the 63 put him in a position where he really didn't have much of a choice but to concede. So that's exactly what he did. Now, holding out strong against the 20 machine, trying to defend that position, while all the while behind them, here comes Damaris Hickenbottom, who's closed in a little bit that lap. He's getting closer and trying to win this race. So who knows with the speed he's had, if he can get out front into clean air, he could definitely be a force to be reckoned with. Kevin Steele behind him, also working his way up through the field. He's kind of lingered around, the mid to low top 10 all night long. So just kind of waiting in the wings for opportunity to present itself. Maybe a wreck happens in front of him and he can avoid it. Maybe these guys' tires fall off and his don't. We're just going to have to see. But right now, it looks like the 20 machines caught the 47, and it's going to be a battle for third as they make their way down the backstretch.
Danny Myatt just on the cusp of getting to the top 3, but he's still yet to get around that 47. Now a gap has spread up between the two, so they'll continue to run through as we stay green on lap 181 of the 400 laps. We're going to take a moment to step away. We're still under the green flag, and you won't miss any of the action. Actually, never mind. We'll stay green. We'll stay on. It looked like we were probably planned it a little bit later, but we will stay green and we'll stay to the coverage right now. But I was just about to mention about Kevin Steele, and now in this long line of cars with Probst and Joseph Lester right behind. Joseph Lester still on that road back to the top 5. He really hasn't gotten there just yet. He is still trying to make his moves, but he's yet to really get out of this latter half of the top 10, sitting 8th at the moment. Has not really gained too much time on the 162 of Zach Probst. He's just been where he was. He got by Princeton. He got by Christopher Hamann at the time. He got by Wineland, and still at where he's been. He's still going to try to gain some more points. I think that spin kind of did not really help his situation whatsoever, but we'll just have to see as Hixenbaugh has taken over the race lead. He got by Adam Benefield.
What an impressive move. I actually kind of missed that. I was so engrossed in the battle behind them. A lot of good racing all over the track that we actually missed this move. But yeah, Bryson Hixenbaugh back to the point, which is really interesting to see because on the previous run, it was the 83 that was kind of pulling away. He went wide. Something happened right there. Might have got on the brakes a little bit too hard and had to counter steer to correct it to keep it straight. Lost a lot of time though, and he's going to fall back into second. The question is, can he take that lead back? We know he's got one of the fastest cars on the track. He did pull away a little bit, like I had mentioned, from Bryson Hixenbaugh on the previous run. So now, can he get around him, Ken?
It's just that small mistake did not really help him whatsoever. And small mistakes at tracks like these can really open the door for a lot of the drivers behind you to gain time or even make that move, just like Hixenbaugh it just did. So back to the race lead, Hixenbaugh will go, and he will lead more laps as those two have really held on for a good portion of this race in terms of leading laps. They have a good chunk of the laps led in this race. I believe Hixenbaugh might have just a little bit more as he continues to lead laps now. He will certainly get past the 83 in terms of laps led. That 83 does have a good amount to his belt. Also, Joseph Lester has some as well. William Boisvert has some, as he was up front just for a moment. And we got a pass for fourth happening between Hickenbottom and Danny Myatt. Myatt was able to get by for fourth, so move that 20 into fourth place and back into this top 5. Damaris Hickenbottom will fall to 5th and possibly on the cusp of losing a spot to Kevin Steele.
Further back in the field, a little bit of heat between two cars that are heavily damaged and lapped down. The number 7 and the number 6, that's Grassy and John Delaney. They almost got into it, and I seen Delaney's mic light up for a minute there, so potentially a little bit of heat. They've now separated a little bit as the 7 is pulled away. They were bumper to bumper when I had checked in on them, so definitely going to be interesting to watch those guys. Behind them, it looks like that is the 53, Preston McRae. He got a little bit loose coming out of that corner, but right now on screen, you're looking at Eric Wineland trying to work his way back up through the field after that mistake earlier on. He's going to make a pass on the high side of the 30 machine, and looks like he's not quite going to get clear, so he's going to have to take that battle to another corner, Ken.
Yeah, I'm surprised Drumhiller didn't really get clear in a 1 and 2. Now he gets clear in a 3 and 4, so he will take over the 11th position, trying to get back into this top 10. Weiland, though, still hanging on the outside. He had a little bit of a shot to the outside. He was still there on the front straightaway, but now for certain he will be cleared and will now have to do battle with the 38 of Brandon Pierce, and it's not going to be enough, so he'll have to focus back on getting by the 30 car for the moment. Meanwhile, gap between the leaders has grown to just about a half a second between Hixenbaugh and Benefield. Looks like that mistake from the 83 really just set him off his rhythm, I should say. And now he's really just falling back and just trying to hang on to this race lead from now on. And it seems to be playing the same way stage 1 did, Andre. The 83 leading a good portion of the laps, with the 63 getting the better hand.
Well, I think this is showing exactly how important clean air is. We know that 83 machine is capable of being faster than Bryson Hixenbaugh. Benefield did pull away from him earlier in the race. We saw that happen. And now he's dropping back. And I think a lot of that is just the aero. He's following another car. He's got that dirty air, and it's working against him. So potentially a setup that is built for the clean air to be, built to be in the lead, to get the most speed and try to pull away as much as possible. But right now he's trying to struggle through that dirty air, and even so, he's sticking with them. He did actually close the gap a little bit that last lap, for the most part, just kind of staying even with Hixenbaugh's lap times. You can see last time around it was a 22-1, 22-2 that time by Bryson Hixenbaugh, and a 22-2 by Benefield. So very close lap times with the 83 in dirty air. So I think that shows that he's got a good setup. It just comes down to aerodynamics.
Yeah, and aerodynamics does play a factor into tracks like these. Not as much as it does at, let's say, Darlington last week, where if you get a little bit of aero damage, it could affect your speed. It can make the car a little bit tighter down the road, and in turn can lose you a lot of time. However, on the short tracks, you don't really lose as much if you have some damage, much like Brandon Pierce, where he has a lot of damage on his race car, but he's not necessarily losing too much time to a lot of drivers. He's losing a little bit, but he's not losing too much to the point where it is debilitating for that car just to continue running, as now the 09 of Hickenbottom will look to the inside of Danny Maya, try to fight back for 4th where he was before the pass was made, and easily into turn 1 and 2 he will clear. I think the 20 of Danny Maya is just going to focus on executing 3 and 4 to be able to get back at him on the front straightaway, but look who's spoiling as a third party. That's the 44 of Kevin Steele, as Danny Maya got a little bit tight trying to get to the quarter panel. He's now going to follow to Kevin Steele now on the bottom.
And what a move that was as we look at the driver cam here. But I tell you what, that 20 machine has been consistent all night long, but it seems like once he gets alongside somebody, that's where the car's handling starts to fall apart. He's got Kevin, Consistency Steele, charging from behind, trying to get to his bumper. And I don't know, I think that right now, as it stands, it seems like the 20 car's long run setup is just wildly unstable. So he's going to have to fight through that, potentially make some pit road setup adjustments later on as we come to the conclusion of stage 2 and possibly through stage 3. Wow, the 9 car, Joseph Lester, very sideways coming out of the corner, managed to gather that up. Still a battle between the 44 and the 20. Now the 44 getting a good run out of the corner, and I think within a few laps, Ken, you're going to see him make the lunge.
Halfway through a lap 200, so it's a great time for us to go through the field and see where everybody is sitting at the moment and their situation. We'll start with your race leader leading currently. Bryson Hixenbaugh has gained 2 positions since the drop of the green flag, so he started in 3rd, but he's been most of this race at the lead of this entire pack, and coming off that win at Darlington and his impressive performance, he's kind of been invincible, I guess if you can phrase it. At least felt invincible throughout these races. Continuing to stride on. He's locked into the round of 12 though, but he's still driving like he's not locked in yet.
And lurking 0.4 seconds back from the leader, Adam Benefield, the league rookie, making an impressive showing tonight, leading a lot of laps, recovering from a pit road mishap, driving all the way through the field, and now running consistently in P2.
And then back to P3 is another driver making his first start in the Galaxy Cup Series, the 47 of William Boisvert. He has been on the cusp of falling out the top 3 just a couple of times, but he's done a phenomenal job of staying where he's been. He's been at the lead momentarily a little bit in this race, but he's mostly been around 2nd, 3rd, and been in the 1st row, 2nd row on the restarts for the most part during those yellows. But that 47 has done a good job of just keeping his place, not really falling or gaining too much. He's just been just been doing great ever since he dropped the green flag, continuing to do so in his debut race.
Damaris Hickenbottom in 4th place. We've seen him linger around the top 5 all night long. He's made some impressive passes thus far tonight, a lot of speed, and I think going forward into this race, as the track conditions change and the tires wear, he's going to have something for the leaders later on.
And then back behind the 09 of Hickenbottom is the 44 of Kevin Steele. Just got by Danny Myatt for the top 5 spot, and if you're the 44, you must be feeling great about your spot at the moment, because this is way better than the finish he got at Darlington last week after being involved in the lap 1 incident. So that 44 is certainly getting a lot of points, at least gaining what he lost at Darlington.
Danny Myatt is going to be in 6th position, not too far behind him. A fast car, but it seems like an unstable car. We've seen him get loose quite a few times. He's had a few wall checks coming out of the corner, and despite all that, he's still showing that he is one of the fastest drivers out here tonight, Ken.
If you've been looking for the top 10 for a good portion of this race, you'll be sure to see that brown and yellow Padres car of the 162 of Zach Probst. He has been one of those drivers that's been stable throughout this race, and it should be enough to gain him points down the road. Just staying where he's been, and top 7, top 10, it won't be too harmless.
Currently engaged in battle with the 162 of Probst is our 8th place driver, Christopher Haman, in that 17 machine. He's been involved in a few mishaps tonight. He's worked through it, now sitting comfortably in 8th place and challenging for 7th.
The man who spun on the restart from the race lead, Joseph Lester, has picked up a lot, and we've talked about him just a bunch of times through this race, where he's been picking up spots and going up to the top 3. Ever since that spin, he's really been in this top 10. He's now still in a fight with the 31 of Wineland. You see that car just stuck out a little bit, had to straighten it back up. Still blocking to the inside of turn 1, but the 9 of Joseph Lester still in this top 10, but it's not looking great at the moment. And back to top 10, there right behind him is the 31 of Eric Wineland, who went in that spin, caused the yellow earlier in this race, and we saw him pick it up, but now he's fallen back a little bit more, but he's going to try to gain P9 over Joseph Lester, as contact between him and Lester will enable him to get that spot, but maybe some damage on that race car, but still the 31 back up to 9th, trying to pick up from where he lost.
Well, he already had a few dents and things in that car. I don't know what a few more might be, but up into P9 goes Eric Wineland on his hunt through the field after that mishap earlier. Just add another one to the list of unfortunate events for Joseph Lester tonight. I mean, that car has been so fast, and he's done such a great job wheeling it around. Unfortunately, things just don't seem to be playing out in his favor, as now he's dropping back even further, as Drumhiller in that 30 machine is going to get around him on the high side potentially, and he is going to get clear before the corner, but it's still going to be a bit of a battle now. Joseph Lester looking to the bottom side, thinks better of it, says nope, not this time, don't want to get too unstable under braking, so he's going to give him a little bit of room as they make their way through the corner. Luce again gets the 9 car, now the 16 up on the high side trying to get around him, and that might be another position lost for Joseph Lester. Luce again onto the straightaway, Ken.
And then back to the 16 of Ryan Samuelson, who just got into the picture after the 9 got loose, and it has been a tough ride for that 16 machine. He spun twice into turn 1 off of the braking of that car. Just too much rear brake has sent him around twice, but that never give up attitude is still working for that 16. He has hustled back to 12th, and now might pick up 11th as the mistakes for the 9 of Joseph Lester continue to stack up over the course of these laps. So the 16 had a tough run early, but has never given up since.
No, he is not. You know, right now you're looking at the 5 car on screen. He has had kind of a roller coaster night. It seems like he's been on camera for almost every mishap, but he's managed to avoid most of them. So, again, just a resilient night. We've seen a lot of drivers have a similar story where they tend to try and avoid everything that happens in front of them, and they manage to pull it off. Now on board with the 5 car, as the drivers ahead of him go side by side. That's always a scary sight at Richmond. Coming out of the corner, Joseph Lester, no choice but to concede that position, as he got way tight there, had to let off the throttle. But a 3-car train right there. Yeah.
And then behind him is the 04 of Dave Few, who really has not had a spotlight night tonight. He has been just involved in some incidents. He clipped one driver earlier in this race, but not too much damage on that 04 Ford Mustang, the Miller Genuine Draft Colors Ford tonight. Here, Richmond certainly looks good under the lights, currently trying to get by the lap car of Cam Caldwell. He got a crash right in front. Joseph Lester finally succumbs to that loose race car, and he is around, but no yellow once again each time, and now the yellow finally flies. It looked for a moment that the yellow was going to still not come out at the hands of Joseph Lester, but it does now. This was an incident with Alex Princeton. The 5 was there as well, and loose again is at 9 of Joseph Lester. And as we were going through this field, Andre, we saw that loose race car really playing into effect, but this time actually helped with the 5 of Alex Princeton.
In the words of Darrell Waltrip, Joseph Lester's having himself a bad night. I can't describe the luck that this guy has fallen upon tonight. I mean, just between the restart and the other incidents, now getting a little bit of help to spin around coming out of turn 4. Just a chaotic night for him. Luckily, the car has never in any of these incidents gotten too much damage to the point where it won't be competitive, but now he's got extra challenge to work through. He's now got to come back through the field once again and try to get as much of that damage fixed as he possibly can.
It has been a case of Murphy's Law for that 9 of Joseph Lester. Anything that could go wrong has already gone wrong now, and it continues to do so. And ever since he had that strong run early, we were kind of praising him for his performance, and then it's been pretty much downhill from there, unfortunately, for his race car. But we've got a lot of drivers down pit road. Pit road is full of drivers right behind the race leader, Bryson Ixtabal. He'll lead them down, and another long green flag run will end with a caution and with pit road.
Just off camera behind that curve in the pit road, Eric Wineland sped through his pit stall, had to put it in reverse. That's going to cost him some time after he had just made up a few positions on track prior to this caution. So, man, a lot of drivers that are just having just the worst luck tonight. I mean, incident after incident. Some of it's their fault, some of it's not. But regardless, they still got to work through it and face this adversity. And this is what you see at tracks like Richmond. It is absolutely grueling, especially when you take this race and you crank it up to 400 laps. It becomes a wear on you physically because you're constantly turning, and a wear on you mentally to the point where you start having these lapses in concentration. But there's going to be 52 to go in the stage, 15 to go, I'm sorry, in the stage. And right now, we're coming to the end of the stage. There's not much time left. And these leaders who were separated from the field, who had a comfortable cushion, that cushion's gone, Ken. So are they getting a little bit nervous? Are they going to maybe drive a little bit more aggressively now that the stage is winding down and they have to claim these points to try and get that cushion through the playoffs?
Well, I think if you're the drivers further back through, I'd say the top 5, right behind the 47, most likely Kevin Steele, Damaris Hickenbottom, Christopher Hammond, Zach Probst, those drivers that are all playoff drivers, by the way, they will be scrambling for sure on this next restart through this stint all the way to lap 235 at the end of stage 2. This will be a dogfight between a lot of those drivers, but for the drivers up front, I'd say Hickenbottom will just be as calm as ever. He has really never been tense through a lot of this race, and he has really showed a lot of composure through tense moments, and he's done a great job of doing that. So I don't think the 63 will have any issues. I don't think Adam Benefield will have any issues. I think he'll definitely go for the stage win, but I don't think he will make any wild moves to possibly get him out of this race. So I don't think he's going to do anything crazy. I don't think the 47 will do anything wild also. I think he's going to try to pounce on the inside of the 83 on the restart, but that will be what he will do, and just trying to get up to Hickenbottom just as best as he can. Battle to look for, though, at least to me, will be 4th, 5th on back. Those drivers all going to be fighting for position and for that one extra point that'll go to their benefit, at least going into the round of 12. Got one driver on the infield care center. That's Jack Durham right now, but we're going to wait just a little bit before we get that interview. We're just going to get the green flag. As soon as we get that settled in, all the way to the stage, we'll talk with Durham and see exactly how his night has gone. It's not gone very well, but hopefully get his perspective from the wheel of that race car that he was going around here at Richmond Raceway. 2 Camaros will be leading the field back to green. Hickenbottom in a familiar spot, back up to P1. Adam Benefield, who lost that spot before that caution came out, is going to have another shot to get back at that 63 to get the better of him at the end of stage 2. Green flag back out, and Higginbottom with a phenomenal start, and then Benefield will just be forced to single file himself out into turn 1 and try to catch up to the 63 the best he can. But meanwhile, you see the battle now between Steele, Hallman, and Damaris Higginbottom hitting up as the 83 is sideways, going off of the back straightaway. He's going to lose a lot of ground, but in turn, more points to Kevin Steele and the drivers behind.
A lucky break for Kevin Steele and those other playoff drivers. We're going to take a look at the replay here. Just a little loose out of the corner. You can see some great counter steer, great car control out of that 83 machine. We expect no less from somebody who's shown to be so fast and so capable tonight. He's going to lose out on some stage points. He's not a playoff driver, so that doesn't really matter too much for him. Right now, his focus is going to be on regrouping and getting back up towards the front so he can once again challenge Higginbottom. But that opened the door up for P2. Right now, William Boiver is going to be in second place. Kevin Steele in third behind him. Damaris Higginbottom in fourth, getting a little bit loose. Man, we have seen this so many times. And now, Ken, caution flies again.
And there is a yellow, once again, involving the 9 of Joseph Lester. And he just said over the radio as the yellow came on that his race is for sure done, as he was the cause of the last yellow, but actually wasn't his fault. It wasn't something that he was the cause of. It was a wreck right in front of him between Delaney and I believe I saw Wayne Grass in the mix as well. Wineland around there as well. That started the whole chaotic sequence. Alex Princeton, Brian Mabry just sandwiched in between there. And then the 9 really had nowhere to go. This is another look. This is turn 1, and once again getting loose for that 31. And then Cameron Caldo might have gotten a piece of that. Then going back up the track, Benefield just barely got by. Not sure if he got any damage. But then goes Princeton, Mabry, Delaney, and then Joseph Lester. Huge pile up on lap 226.
Just unbelievable that the 31 and the 9 have again been caught up in an incident. Just like you mentioned, a little bit too much brake for that 31 machine, got him sideways. Riding on board now, and through the wreck you can see just how close of a call it was for this 83 machine as the 31 spins up the track right up against his door. Might have even grazed him, but luckily he was able to get through it. What a disaster that could have been for a driver who's led so many laps. An amazing dodge as we're now on board with Joseph Lester, seeing what he saw as everybody in front of him just checked up massively. Nowhere to go, nothing to do, but hope for the best. And unfortunately, that might be his night over.
And it could have been a night over for Adam Benefield. That was way too close for comfort for that 83. Just getting by from Eric Wineland spinning down the racetrack and coming back up, almost got into him. He could have been someone involved, and that would have been very detrimental for that 83. Luckily, still in this race. And like we just mentioned before that restart, now we're finally going to have our space to get a word with Jack Durham in the Infield Care Center. We're going to bring him in. Jack Durham, first of all, welcome to the 3Y TV booth. You got a copy with us?
10-4.
All right, Jack. Well, you currently have not had the night that you were hoping for. You're one of the game fuel cars out of the, I think, the couple out here on the track tonight. But first of all, Jack, just walk us through your experience behind the wheel and really what happened for your night here at Richmond.
I got a call. 1 second.
All right.
I'm
A little bit of technical difficulties here. Sounds like we got Jack. Ken, take it away.
Well, Jack, not sure whether you heard my question. I'll repeat it anyway. Just
go ahead.
All right, talk us through really what happened for you tonight and what has really led to the result at the moment for you here at Richmond.
I got caught up in a few wrecks, but I was getting ready to come around for Lucky Dog, and then Caldwell decides home don't mean nothing and just dives right back out in front of me, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And then I blew up about 15 laps later.
Unfortunate situation for you in the 217, and you got another short track on your hands next week at Bristol. Is there any game plan or anything you might want to learn from here at Richmond to take away and bring that into Bristol and get a better result from there?
Don't qualify on the back. I'll qualify on the front and race up there. They written hard that way. Too much back there.
All right, Jack. Well, we hope to wish you luck out at Richmond. We're glad to see that you're okay, but unfortunate situation. And we hope to see you at Bristol next week, and we wish you luck.
10-4. Good luck, guys.
Jack Durham out of the booth, and we also got Lester down there in the infield care center. But just like the situation with Jack Durham, we're just going to wait until we get this green flag, get everything situated, then get Lester to talk with him in the infield care center. But meanwhile, we've got a restart back here at lap 232, just 3 laps shy of the stage end at lap 235. Bryson Ixenbaugh easily takes over the race lead, and with Benefield out of the picture for now, that's going to allow the 47 to try to gain ground and focus on getting back to the leader, as Kevin Steele and Hickenbottom are side by side for third.
Kevin Steele making that move on the bottom. Hickenbottom shot up the track. He was on the high side. I thought he was going to lose a little bit more ground than he did, and now luckily able to file in single file. That's going to save him a lot of positions and heartache, as that is not a luxury the 20 of Danny Myatt can afford. He is stuck on the high side for the foreseeable future, as he has cars freight training him. Unfortunately, that's going to be quite a few positions lost. Now the 04, Dave Fugue, is going to join him on the high side, as the 83 is in that gaggle of cars, the 20, the 17, and the 83, as well as the 04, all duking it out back there. The 83, of course, trying to work his way back up through the field again. That's a story we've seen play out a few times tonight. Whoa, Dave Fugue sideways down the back straightaway. He's going to come back up the track potentially. The caution is out, and I believe that will end the stage, Ken.
Caution out at 234, just as they were approaching the white flag to stage 2. And that will conclude stage number 2, so it'll leave the field frozen and the win of stage 2 in the hands of Bryson Ixenbaugh. Here's another look at what happened with Dave Fugue in the 04. Just loose there, trying to say the race car was still wiggling, and it looked like he had it straight and he had it saved a little bit, but then wiggled the car just a little bit more, and then in turn it turned his car around and went around. Luckily, no one else involved, and you see him just wheeling that race car, just trying to keep it straight and just trying to hold the throttle so he doesn't lose as many positions, but it turned him around, and he was the solo car around, and luckily no one else involved, and not really much damage to the 04. I don't think he had a lot of contact with the wall on the inside, so he will still troop on. But meanwhile, the stage will conclude. Ixenbaugh and the rest of the field will go down pit road. Andre?
They're going to go ahead and get 4 tires and fuel, stack them up and reset them, and make our way into the final stage of the race. I got to say, I don't think that's how a lot of these drivers thought the stage was going to end, so maybe catching them off guard a little bit. Alas, it shouldn't be too big of a change their strategy. It should be pretty much the same either way. The 83 gaining a lot of positions, both from that incident and from his pit strategy. He's going to be right behind the 162 machine, Zach Probst. So slowly but surely, once again, working his way back towards the front. And for too long, he should be up here. But I tell you what, Ken, how about we have a word with our stage winner?
And again, Joseph Lester in here and see exactly what has gone really downhill for his night here at Richmond. Joseph, first of all, welcome to the 3Y TV booth. You got a copy?
Yeah, I got a copy.
All right, Joseph. Well, it looked promising for you early on, but it has not been great ever since. You gained a lot of spots up to the top 3. And first of all, I want to talk about the sequences that happened, starting with the restart. Just go over what really happened there on the restart that sent you around.
So I clipped the apron and I tried throttling up too soon, and I just messed up.
Yeah, it was
unfortunate. So it looked like your car was fighting loose all night long, particularly on exit. Did you have your car set up just preparing for these cold temperatures, thinking that maybe it'd have a little bit more grip than you wound up having?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I had an air pressure adjustment and it just screwed up the car.
Unfortunate. You mentioned that air pressure adjustment. What way did you go on it, and what way do you think a lot of these guys are going to try to go as the night progresses?
If the track gets more grip, they'll probably add some more left front tire pressure, get it loosened up. That's what I had done, and it just got too loose.
All right, well, we hate to see your night end like that. We were very impressed with your speed early on. We know you've got the pace, and hopefully you can make a comeback at Bristol next week.
Yeah, I'm hoping to rebound it on home track.
All right, well, we will see you at Bristol. Joseph, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, that's Joseph Lester out of the booth. An unfortunate night for him. Just, I can't stress that enough, man. You don't see that much bad luck very often. So right now, the caution remaining out, and on the pace car, we're gonna go around another time. It looks like, as the lights are still. Nope, the lights are off on the pace car. I apologize. So we're gonna be racking them and stacking them this time, Ken.
Back here, doubled up with the rest of the field, and you see all the rows down to Randy Drumhiller, then Preston McRae. There is a couple of drivers there. Cameron Caldwell there as well. Brian Mabry still trying to truck on after the incidents and the damage on all of their race cars, actually. But we're going to take a green flag back at a restart at the conclusion of stage number 2. Hicks and Ball will shoot out to the front of this field, and 47 boys will have a little more work to do in order to close that gap back up. Meanwhile, Hickenbottom will still be side by side once again on the restart. This time, not with Danny Maya, but with the 162 of Zach Probst and possibly Adam Benefield down the road.
And it's a battle that is broken out. Unfortunately, Damaris Hickenbottom going from a podium position to a little bit further back, being stuck on the high side. The 162 and now the 83 are going to freight train him on the low side. And the 17 going to try to join him if the 09 can't quite slide down. Looks like the 09 can get clear. Wreck behind him. It's Eric Wineland on the backstretch.
31 of Wineland around to the back straightaway. Another case, just like we saw with the 04 of Dave Fugue. But this time it is the 31 Ford Mustang. And the third incident, at least the fourth incident that involves that 31 of Wineland. And just the rear end stepping out. And by that time, it's just too late. Just trying to save it. Hold on to the brake. And not sure whether there's much damage on the front end of that Mustang. I think he might have woed it down just in time to maybe just brush that wall just a little bit, or just stop it enough, and just a tiny contact with the wall, a little bit of bump, might have a little crinkle on the front end. I don't think it's going to be too drastic, but he's going to lose a lot of positions from this. Take an aerial shot. You see exactly this is coming off turn 2, and Andre, once again, just another case of getting loose and the rear end stepping out, something we're seeing now as we progress through this race even further.
I got to wonder if a lot of this doesn't come from the drivers just not quite being used to this low downforce package anymore. A lot of the tracks we're going to on the schedule have the high downforce, the big spoilers, the low horsepower, and the cars are a little bit more stable. You feel like you can trust them a little bit more when you make these aggressive moves like hammering the throttle or getting on the brakes. But now at a track like this, you just don't have that grip. You don't have that downforce. So maybe these guys are putting a little bit too much faith into their setups, into their cars, and just kind of struggling to adapt now to this low downforce, high horsepower package.
Yeah, that's a great point. We see a lot of drivers trying to struggling with their runs and their setups. You know, of course, you put in a lot of practice, you put in a lot of time trying to get your setup right, but even the track can set you off your game and make things a little more unpredictable. And although you can test as much as you can, if you don't test in the right weather setup or you don't test in the right conditions, it could just possibly be an entirely different game plan, because then you're accustomed to having the setup work on a certain set of conditions that you have in your test sessions, and then when the race comes around, it's a full different set of conditions that you have to adapt to over the course of the race. I wouldn't be surprised if there are a couple of drivers here who are struggling with that, and the amount of time they've put in is not equal to what's happening in the race, and their cars maybe aren't feeling as good as maybe they had it on the test session. So we're going to have some drivers still under caution. I'm going to be curious to see whether they go down pit road, and it seems to be the answer is no. So with that, we'll get the stage winner in, Bryson Hickenbaugh. He swept stage number 1. He's going to go to stage number 2 with another win, and although he's locked in, he's still racking up points. And Bryson, welcome back to the 3Y TV booth. You got a copy with us?
Yes.
All right, Bryson, you won stage 1, you sweep stage 2. Another question, I guess, to go by. What is really your plan of attack now in stage 3? Is it still calm and steady?
It's going to be interesting to see where Benefield comes in. It seems like we're pretty close in tires or in car. He's restarting 4th here, so if he can get through the pack, we'll be racing hard. But I'm going to try and see if I can squeeze away a little bit, and we'll see where we shake out in about 15 or so laps.
And as the run continues to progress, how has that car really felt with those drivers around you? I know in clean air it seems to feel a lot better, and you've really excelled in that clean air, but with drivers like Benefield and Boisvert at your toes, has the car really changed in terms of dynamic going through the corners?
It's a little bit loose on exit because I've been trying to find a little bit more turn in. It's manageable right now, but just trying to make it work as it goes through some of the changes on the track and not losing it off the corner.
All right, Bryson. Well, you got that stage 1 and stage 2 points to your benefit going into the round of 12. We wish you luck with the rest of this race.
Thank you, guys.
Bryson Nixonball going to be out of this booth, and he is the stage 2 winner. As we got the 1 to green signal, we will take the green flag with the 63 in command with the 47 to his outside. Hicksabah just mentioned Benefield in 4th. We'll see how he shakes out. Another great start for the 63 as they're going to turn 1, the 83 and the 162 side by side. Possibly the 47 under pressure, but he's going to block it into turn 1.
Benefield got boxed in a little bit on that restart. The 47 in front of him, the 162 beneath him. Really nowhere to go, and as a driver, that's not a good feeling to know that you kind of have to keep your exact line and have no deviation, otherwise you risk making contact, especially when it's the non-preferred line, being up high, not getting too much speed. Luckily, the 83 is going to get clear of the 162 of Probst, so Benefield is going to be on the attack of the 47, going to try to get right up against that bumper and potentially make the move coming into 3 and 4. Right now, looking on screen, we can see the 04 getting a little bit slideways coming down the tri-oval, gathering it up. Luckily, nothing more broke out from that. But yeah, just a little bit of maybe contact with the wall is what kicked that off, I think. It might have happened. So now, the 83 machine up into P2, Ken.
And he's got by the 47 easily, and now just back to the charge on the agenda for the 83 to get by Hicksonball and take over the race lead once more and try to lead this thing all the way up to the end. Remember, there are no stage yellows from here on out, so we'll stay green unless yellows come out through, which we have seen a couple of times. You see some yellows spliced in over some of these longer runs, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see that further down going into this race as we approach less than 100 laps to go. And once we get to lap 300, we'll see how that shakes out. But if we stay green, we'll be sure to see green flag pit stops and possibly some more strategy playing into the entire race, as we saw over Darlington, where we had green flag pit stops. We saw a lot of drivers move positions. As right now, you're looking at a little bit of a pack behind Cameron Caldwell. These are all drivers on the lead lap and drivers who have been involved in incidents. Cameron Caldwell, Wayne Grassy, the 30 of Randy Drumhiller, who's now going to be on the outside of Dave Fugue, Alex Princeton, and Eric Wineland, who got that damage from that recent yellow after spinning on the back straightaway. Got a lot of drivers still in this group, and now a lot more separation, Andre, I'd say, because we had, on the previous restarts, we really had drivers third on back, like Benefield. We saw Probst, Hickenbottom, Hammond, and Steele making battles and going side by side. But really, I think on this last restart, it's been pretty tame.
It has been pretty tame, Ken. Going back to Cam Caldwell and that whole group of cars, I got to say it's been a silent but impressive comeback for Cam Caldwell. He was as far back on the grid as 18th, I believe. Now up into P10, 5 seconds back from the leader on the lead lap. So he's making the comeback, trying to salvage what he can out of his night, trying to get as many points as he can to progress further on into the playoffs. You know, we got Pierce in that 38 machine in front of Caldwell. We haven't really talked about him all night long. He's been involved in a couple scuffles, but despite that, he's up there in 9th place, again, 5 seconds back from the leader, having a pretty solid and consistent night. A lot of damage to the rear end of that car we're seeing, but doesn't seem to be holding him up too much. And in fact, at a track like this, maybe less body panels is a bit of an advantage. You got less weight, a little bit more rotation. Who knows, Ken?
And I mentioned that earlier in the broadcast, Andre, that Brandon Pierce, even with that damage, despite all that damage on the race car, he's done an impressive job of maintaining his spot. He's in this top 10, so it's not a total loss for a car that's all beaten, banged up, as now he's going to try to pounce for 8th position over Ryan Samuelson and easily will take it by. So even with that damage, he's still got all the engine power under the hood, and he is making it stick, and he's gaining positions and in a great place to gain points and just have a great run despite all the issues.
A scary moment just broke out for the number 83 of Adam Benefield. Coming to the line for lap 257, he got really sideways and fishtailed it across the line, managing to gather it up. But in doing so, he actually sacrificed quite a bit of time to Hicksonball. So now he's got to try to reel it back in and get some more, regain that ground that he had lost, Ken.
And Andre, I think the question arises here with a lot of drivers getting more loose than we saw in the first stages of this race. Do you think it's just a product of drivers getting a little more aggressive and just trying to maximize their cars the most they can now that it's the second half of the race?
It absolutely could be. We're in the closing half of the race. Things are winding down. Strategies are changing. And I think they've been aggressive all race long. I mean, we've seen drivers getting on the throttle too early, getting on the brakes a little bit too hard. And they're not doing that because they're bad drivers. They're doing that because they're trying to get everything out of their car that they possibly can, pushing it to the ragged edge. And when you're on that edge, it's easy to overstep your boundaries a little bit here and there. But now that aggression factor has just gone through the roof, even higher than it was, as we now have a battle for 10th between Wayne Grassy and Cam Caldwell side by side as they make their way down the backstretch.
And it's been like this for a couple of laps now. They were initially battling with Ryan Samuelson, I believe, but now they've kind of been out there as it was very tight between Cameron Caldwell and Wayne Grassy. Drumhiller now trying to be the third party to get that inside, and he will to Cameron Caldwell. And that contact between the two that will keep it straight, and just more door contact between a lot of these drivers that we've seen over the course of the evening has still played true. A lot of drivers still beating and banging and still making it stick, at least as now Caldwell will try to retaliate to the inside. He will try to take that position back and make the crossover move into 1 and 2, and he will. Meanwhile, behind them, as they're battling, that's further allowing that 31 and the 5 car, and also possibly the 04 of Dave Few to start gaining some ground, and they might be in the battle for the top 10 position, but currently Wayne Grassy holds it.
I gotta admit, I'm pretty impressed by how well the 12 held his ground on the high side. Usually you see him drop back a little bit quicker than he did when he gets stuck up there. But unfortunately, we also saw the risk of being up high and fighting on the high side as he made that little bit of contact. Now a battle for 4th. Damaris Hickenbottom, Zach Probst, as well as that appears to be the 17 machine joining the fray. All three of these guys duking it out for that position.
Yeah, it has not been easy for even drivers in the top 5, and to give credit to Damaris Hickenbottom, he really haven't had a breath of fresh air. It really hasn't had time to relax. He's just been battling with drivers in the top 5, and it has never been easy. So a lot of props to that 09 for keeping his composure and staying where he's been and staying consistent from here on out. But meanwhile, still more playoff drivers. All three of these with the red banners up at the top, the red splitters and the red spoilers. All of them still battling for points down the line. We've been talking about this over the course of the night, Andre, where we've seen drivers gaining positions and drivers fighting for spots, but it's not just that. It's a bigger picture down at hand, because since all these drivers are playoff drivers, even back to Kevin Steele right behind them, who's going to join the group, it's still just a battle for points to get into the round of 12. Set yourself up for Bristol, and if you don't have the best race at Bristol, you can still fall back on those points if needed.
Definitely, and you know the crazy thing is, there's a lot of drivers that are further down on the playoff grid that are having good nights tonight. And as a result, it makes it all kind of redundant. If everybody else has a good night when you do, then you're not gaining much. So definitely an interesting showing by a lot of these drivers that have a lot of speed, a lot of ability around this track. But, you know, if things stay the way they are, this could mean that the points don't actually change hands that much. Everybody's having such a good showing. I mean, Kevin Steele, Zach Probst, Haman, Hickenbottom, these drivers are all, 4 through 7 racing with one another. And it's only, so many points between the majority of them up there. So definitely an interesting way that this is played out, but a fun battle to watch too. I mean, Kevin Steele trying to defend against Zach Probst in that 17 machine, making the passes that he made. He has been quietly consistent all night long, Ken. He has been getting a lot of camera time, running up front, top 10, top 5, and not really involved in too many incidents after the initial few there early on in the race.
Yeah, it's been a bounce back to remember for that 17 and inevitably more points gained. But I was also thinking that to be all these drivers and all very close together, to be 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th actually, and 7th with Zach Probst in 7th right behind. With all those being playoff drivers, I can imagine and I can sense that going into next week at Bristol, if this remains the same, that the gaps will be even tighter for elimination, because although you're running well, although maybe you're running 4th, you're running 5th, you're still maybe 1 point out from the drivers who are gaining just 1 more spot or 1 more point or 1 less point than you if they finish this race like this. So going into Bristol, you don't have much of a cushion to lean on. You won't have as many points racked up. You'll just have 1 point maybe or 2 points, a couple of points above the other driver behind you. So then let's say if something does happen at Bristol, then the positions can still change also. So I was thinking about that just a little more of what I just said. So it makes a little more sense now that they're all synced together. They're going to still be tightened up at Bristol, and they won't be as much separated. The only way they would be separated was the drivers that are not having great nights tonight. For example, Cameron Caldwell, drivers like Danny Maya now, who's 16th, Delaney, Preston McRae, Brian Mabry, those drivers who are in the playoffs, Josh Coppernall as well. Those drivers that are in the playoffs, they are losing a lot of points. But within this top 5, it's going to be tight, as now we've got a side-by-side battle for 5th between the 44 of Steele and the 17 of Hammond.
He's trying to make that overtake. The bottom line obviously is going to do him well, but actually the 17 getting a good run down the straightaway. We're going to see if he can, again, try to get that run out of the corner. Possibly his last defense is that exit speed you get from running high. They remain side by side. You can see the 17 just edging out the 44 on straightaway speed, but then they get to this corner, and of course that grip on the bottom lane is what carries Kevin Steele through. Unfortunately, that time he got on the throttle a little bit too early, shot up the track, had to lift off the throttle, and now the 17 is comfortably back in his position.
Still green on lap number 275 with Bryson Ixenbaugh leading 1.2 seconds over Adam Benefield, and it's been a good fight between those two, but there's always been those moments where they have separated increasingly. It's been the other way around with the 83 and the 63, but now it's flipped over. 63 is still getting the best of it for now. Doesn't seem like that 83 really has much over this long run. So it's been just a matter of staying where he's been. He's got a great gap. He's got about 5 seconds between himself and William Boisvert in third. So it's not like he would be too close to the driver in third, and he won't really have a charge. 47 really just handling himself all by himself, just kind of running his own race, racing the track. And in some cases, Andre, that's just better than driving around other drivers.
Definitely. Anytime you can have clean track and kind of be on your own, get a feel for the car, and just kind of clock these laps in and not worry too much about the traffic around you is time well spent. Right now, on board with, I believe that's Kevin Steele, as he is behind that 17 machine on the hunt again, trying to reclaim that position. And Zach Probst behind him, dropping back a little bit. He had a lot of speed early on in the run, now seeming to drop back, potentially not a long run setup, and that could be an interesting factor later on. If he has a short run setup, I think he'd be one of the few drivers in the field to actually have one. So if we get to the end of this race, things get chaotic, we get more cautions, and he's the only one with a short run setup, who knows, he could sneak his way up into a podium position given the right circumstances. That is definitely going to be interesting. Right now, we're looking at 3 wide between Wayne Grassy and the number 30, as well as the 16. That's Drumhiller and Samuelson. 3 wide momentarily. They're going to sort it out masterfully. They're going to sort it out and get single file. But a scary moment there for the 3 of them.
Lots of separation between the top 5, but then there is a cluster full of cars behind Eric Wineland. He got by Drumhiller and the 7 of Wayne Grassy. They are all together. And then following in line, Samuelson, who we continue to see drivers even getting into incidents, still managing top 15s. And since there's so many drivers that are out of this race, they're able to gain on them, and they really won't have much to lose, as now Wineland will go to the inside of the 38 of Brandon Pierce. The 38 might have looked to go back at him, but it's not going to be successful. So move the 31 out to 8th, as that 30 of Drumhiller got very loose down the front straightaway. He was able to catch it back, though, and he will be to the inside of Grassy before the top 10.
A close call for Drumhiller, but again, back to this battle between the 17 and the 44. These guys seem to have a rope tied to each other's cars, or magnets or something, because they have been really close for the majority of this stint. I mean, their lap time's got to be near identical as they navigate this track time after time, not really gaining, not really losing. And the 16 has gone around. That's Ryan Samuelson, loose right over the ground cam, and now the caution has flown.
Yellow flag out once again, this time for Ryan Samuelson, and that was pretty much right in front of the leaders as soon as he was getting his car back up to speed. You see him, that was a very odd situation there. Got clipped to the apron as he was spinning around and then was able to wheel it back just very quickly. And there's Hixenbaugh in the picture. And you got to imagine that the leaders at some point, especially Hixenbaugh, was going to start getting to this lap traffic if we stayed green. But fortunately, that is not the case. He won't have any cars to go through for lap traffic and lap any more cars down the road. as here is the onboard with Samuelson, and once again, another case of just losing it in 1 and 2. Boy, 1 and 2 has not really been nice to that 16 team tonight.
No, it has not. 1 and 2 has not been kind to anybody, Ken. But while these drivers make their way down pit road and get things sorted out, we're going to throw it to commercial when we get back. After pit road, we're going to throw it to commercial. I apologize. When we get that back to green, it's going to be some fantastic racing. But let's see. Does anybody maybe pull a crazy strategy and try to take 2 tires, perhaps? I mean, I don't think 2 tires is really the smartest decision, but if you're somebody who's out here desperate for track position, that could be the move. We've also got a lot of drivers that seem to be staying out. I believe those are the lap down cars trying to stay out and make their pit stop next time around when they're designated to. But the 83, it's a clean entry. He's driven through his stall twice tonight, but now clean entry for that 83 in the pit road. And
a clean exit for the 63 of Bryson Ixenbaugh. He will lead this field off of pit road. Benefield got the betterment of the 47. The 09 will be into 4th. Christopher Hamann is still stuck on pit road. He is losing a lot of ground on pit road, but as pit cycle has just ended, we're going to take a short break and step away for a moment. You are watching the Galaxy Cup Series round of 16 for the Virginia Commonwealth and the Richmond Raceway. Back at Richmond Raceway, Andre Granbush and Kenneth Munnell with you. We are back green, a lap 290, with Bryson Ixenbaugh leading this field after the cycle of pit stops under the yellow flag. Benefield will be 2nd. Boisvert into 3rd. Damaris Hickenbottom will fall to 4th. And like we were talking about, Andre, before we went to commercial, the battle between the top 5 was heating up even through that long green flag run, but it's even more clustered.
Absolutely. Once, like we mentioned before, these restarts present new opportunities, and wow, a little bit of contact there between the 09 and the 162. That's Probst and Damaris Hickenbottom getting into it a little bit. Just some paint trading, some brotherly love going on there. I don't know, but they're going to gather it up, and they're still too wide behind them. Still a lot of action going on through this pack, and I think we're going to see these restarts get crazy like this. I mean, the race is winding down, time is running out, and these restarts were kind of tame early on in the race, and now I think that's starting to change.
And that refers back to the point, the question that I asked of whether drivers are getting more aggressive as we're getting to 100 laps left in this race. Just about 108 laps left in this race. Now as contact between Brandon Pierce and Cameron Caldwell will set the yellow out once again on lap 292. Hicks him out the front of this field. We were looking at that going on, but meanwhile, the 38 had a slide up to the 12 of Cameron Caldwell, and the 12 pretty much almost went around and actually saved the race car, but then at that point, then just tried to rear it back and then send that car around, stopped sideways on the racetrack, therefore triggering that yellow once again. But just over 100 laps to go in this race. You see the onboard cam with Caldwell trying to rear the car back to the right, and then as soon as it looked like he had it saved, it swings all the way to the other side, and then he has no choice but to hold on to the brakes and hope that nobody else gets into him. Here's a little area shot and just contact between the 38, aggressiveness going up, just drivers trying to get the gas in, trying to enter the corner, and it's affecting a lot of their performance.
Absolutely. That was just a classic case of sending it in a little bit too deep. You can see he got on the brakes. He tried to avoid sliding into the 12, but once that action had been set into motion, it could not be interrupted. He was sliding up, and unfortunately Caldwell, just a bystander in all of this, just kind of along for the ride. Hopefully not too damaged to that 12 machine. We know he's been through a lot tonight. This whole field's been through a lot, Ken. This has been a rough race for just about anybody not named Bryson Hicksonbaugh. So just a crazy night so far, and we've still got 100 laps left of this.
Yeah, there's a long way to the checkered flag. 100 laps doesn't feel like much here at Richmond, but it's still a lot, even coupled with the yellows that we've had. And we're probably expecting yellows, and it's just about 40 minutes, so it's just a little less than an hour. It's still a long way all the way to lap 400, even if we stay green. And if we're expecting more yellows down the road, if there's going to be situations like this still happening, we're going to easily overshoot that 40-minute mark, and we're probably going to go over an hour, or maybe even just short of an hour, which will still be a while. Still going all the way to the checkered flag to find out who will be the winner in the round of 16. Right now, it is looking like Hicksonbaugh is kind of unbeatable at the moment. He's had pressure from the 83, but it really hasn't been enough to shake his composure up. He has been so calm. I think you can really compare him to, I'd say, the NBA player Kawhi Leonard in terms of how calm he is and how powerful he is down the stretch. And even in times of dire needs, even in times of pressure, he doesn't really express it. He just really keeps his calm, stays cool, and is able to benefit out of it.
Absolutely. But you know what? I can't imagine he's that calm right now, because Darlington, the straightaways are a little bit longer. The corners are a little bit more sweeping. He had a lot more distance between him and other cars. Now at this track, it's such a small track to the point where if he builds up enough of a gap, he's going to be in lap traffic. It seems like there's only a small window of about 20 laps where he's really on his own, and then boom, he's right back into lap traffic. So even though his car is fast and he's managed to avoid being involved in any incidents thus far tonight, who's to say that doesn't change? I mean, this is an unpredictable track. We've seen tonight so many drivers get caught up in things that they had nothing to do with, and being the leader doesn't make you exempt from that, no matter how fast your car is. If there's 7 cars stopped on the straightaway in front of you, either you got to have some experimental hydraulics that can jump you over them, or you have to just accept your fate. So it's going to be interesting to see. Bryson's got a fast car, but I don't think he should get too calm and complacent, because in a sport like NASCAR or in any motorsport, complacency is the enemy. When you get too complacent, that's when the mistakes sneak in, Ken.
Yeah, when you get really complacent, the complacency really can throw you off and kind of force you into things maybe you don't even acknowledge. You can make mistakes without even knowing. Sometimes you may be putting in enough gas, and then all of a sudden your car is swinging out and you don't know why. But we'll just see how that really plays out. But through the rest of this race, we're going to get another restart. Hicksonbaugh will choose his place to restart this field, and he does right at that white line, and he's easily able to do what he's done all race long, get away on this rest of the field. Not much of a gap to the 83 or Benefield, but it's enough to clear him.
It was enough to clear him, but not quite enough to get away. The 83 charging hard into the corner, right down on that bottom line like we mentioned before. He's so good at sticking to that yellow line. Now squirrely as they make their way out of the corner. Adam Benefield got a great run, but it might have just been a little bit too much. On screen, you're currently watching the battle between the 38, that's Pierce, and Dave Fugan, the 04. They are side by side with the 17 car behind them. And behind them, you got Wayne Grassy and Cam Caldwell. Cam Caldwell obviously being involved in that last incident there. So I don't know, if I'm Brandon Pierce and I see the 12 getting up to me after I was just the guy that accidentally spun him, he probably knows it was an accident. Cam Caldwell probably knows it was an accident, but in the heat of the moment, when things get heated, maybe that doesn't matter so much. So I think Brandon Pierce has some added motivation to try and get out of this guy's way.
And I think a lot of drivers, especially here within this top 10, a little bit further back, maybe to the top 15, and maybe even a little further up, I'm sure these drivers are now just familiar with each other and how they're racing because they've been so close to those drivers all race long. You mentioned drivers like Cam Caldwell, who just went around on that last caution. He's back up to the top 10. Guys like Brandon Pierce, Dave Fugue, Wayne Grassy, Ryan Samuelson, and now Danny Mayan, who's back on this lead lap. It's a lot of drivers that are accustomed to seeing these drivers around them for most of this race. So at least they gain some knowledge on how those drivers manage this track and how they're really able to manage their race cars. Maybe they're a little bit more loose than others. Maybe some drivers are diving in more deep into the corners. How are they attacking these corners? How are they exiting? How are they allowing drivers to get by, or if they're still blocking all the way down to the racetrack like we've seen a couple of drivers do. It's all a matter of learning, and I think if you're one of these drivers back here, it's probably not the best situation to be far back in this field, but at the same time, on the other end, you're gaining some knowledge about the drivers around you, and even if we have some playoff drivers in the mix in that group, you can learn from your fellow playoff drivers and try to beat them at Bristol next week.
Absolutely. Knowledge is key, and we talked about it earlier. When you know how the other guy's going to race you, when you know the lines that guy's going to run, that allows you to try and formulate a strategy to counter it. We mentioned earlier that Bryson Hicksonbaugh won here last time the league visited Richmond, and a lot of the guys in the field were in that race with him, so they got to watch him drive this track. I'm sure some of them went back and watched the replays, looked at his wheel inputs, looked at his throttle inputs, and tried to familiarize themselves with what is he doing? What is this guy doing to get around this track faster than I did? And when you have that knowledge, that makes you a much fiercer opponent. That's not a luxury that Adam Benefield has. Benefield is a rookie of this league. We've talked about it. This is his first race. He knows nothing about Hicksonbaugh. He doesn't know the lines that he's going to run. He doesn't know how clean of a driver he is. Despite that, Benefield has been right with him, running alongside him this entire night. And I'm sure over that course, he's probably began to learn about Hicksonbaugh. He knows the lines he's going to run. He knows what kind of setup he has, and potentially even what kind of strategies he might be more prone to pull. We haven't seen a whole lot of strategy play out. We've had a lot of cautions that have kind of canceled out the strategy, but just a very intense battle of not only battle on the track, but a kind of a battle of the minds trying to figure out what is the other guy going to do, Ken.
And that's a great point by you, Andre. But also, we are looking at the top two, and I've noticed over the past couple laps, that 83 of Adam Benefield is not letting Hicksonbaugh get away with it easily. We saw that in the long run where Hicksonbaugh was able to gap his lead to just about a second and a half, and he's been in smooth sailing. But at the moment, the 83 is really not letting him go. He's kind of still within striking distance and within time to even gain on that 63. So although they had that long green flag run where the 83 possibly wasn't the best, the 83 might have another shot at it.
Well, and they did just come down pit road. Who knows? Maybe some adjustments have been made to either one of their cars. If Bryson went the wrong way on a tire pressure adjustment, the 83 went the right way, that could be coming into effect now that the tires are starting to wear. And you're right, he is closing that gap. Now this lap, he's even a little bit closer than he was before. So he took the gap from 3 car lengths down to about 2 car lengths, and he is closing in ever so slowly. If he can get to the leader's bumper, he could definitely try and make an attack. It's hard to pass here, but the 83, we've seen time and time again, that thing is glued to the bottom lane. And if you can just get a little bit lower than the next guy, enter a little bit deeper than him, that makes the overtake that much easier. So the gap is closing, and when it gets there, it's going to be fun to watch.
And you're looking on board with the 83 and just see his tactic going into each and every corner, how he slows down, how he picks back up the throttle, and he's done a great job of picking up time along the way to that 63. It's now gone down just a little bit. You see him with a better entry into the corner. I think Hicksonbaugh probably gets a little bit better out of it off the exit of the corner. That's where he gains the most time, especially off turn 4. I'm noticing that the 63 seems to gain a lot more time, but that 83, especially like we just mentioned, on the fresh tires. They pitted. It's been a little bit since they pitted, but they still have relatively fresh rubber. It's not all the way worn down. It's not necessarily to the point where it would go flat or anything, or the point where it's undrivable. So as soon as they start to wear down even further, you kind of have to start looking at how those drivers handle it. We've had the long runs. We've seen how they do, but does adjustments really help it all the way to the point where even on those older tires, you can really be faster?
Oh, definitely. Tire pressures are one of those adjustments that actually kind of changes dynamically as the race goes on. So as the tires wear, that tire pressure affects you in different ways. So that could definitely come into play later on. I think we're starting to see it come into play right now with the way the 83 has found so much speed in turn 2. You mentioned Hickson-Baugh, his hot spot where he's fastest seems to be coming out of turn 4, and I think the reason for that is just how different turn 4 is to turn 2. In turn 2, you're coming onto the exactly straight back straightaway, and you kind of got to pinch your car down to make sure you don't slide up into that outside wall. But coming out of turn 4, you've got the tri-oval, which makes the exit a less sharp corner, meaning you can kind of let the car drift out a little bit more, be a little bit freer on the steering. And maybe there's something about Hickson-Baugh's setup that makes it faster in those types of situations. You're riding on the gyro cam of your leader, Bryson Hickson-Baugh, with the comparative lap times. Last time by, it was a 22.2 by the leader, and the car behind 22.2 again. So very similar lap times. Potentially these two leaders maybe even saving a little bit, Ken. Who knows? This has been a fairly long green flag run, and if they think it's going to stay green, maybe there's some conservation coming into play.
And as we cross the line, we just got about 83 laps to go in this race, and I'm assuming that the leaders are expecting a long green flag run, and if they're saving now, especially with the amount of laps on their tires, just about to get to 30 laps on their shoes, it is going to be a matter of just trying to save it for the most part. Try to keep it under you, try to keep it from wearing even more to the point where it'll make your car perform worse. As now we're looking back a little bit through the field, and now a 4-car train right behind Christopher Hammond. This is Eric Caldwell. This is for 9th. There's Danny Mai, the 30 of Randy Drumhiller, and then just a little bit further back as the 17's into the outside wall. Caution waves once again, and a very interesting situation. As soon as we got to that pack, the caution just got triggered, and this was going into turn number 1. Not sure whether he got loosened or overcorrected, and it is. Thought he might have had some help, but that is not the case whatsoever. Look at everyone getting by, and Rich Petrucco barely getting by on the inside.
Talk about threading the needle there, splitting the car, one car high, one car low, everybody managing to steer clear of the 17, which is not only good for them, but also good for the 17, because if he can get that car fixed up and get it rolling, he doesn't have as much damage as he might have. So we're riding on board with the 17, his perspective, as he just gets a little bit too hard on the brakes, a little bit too much correction, doing a good job of locking up the brakes, making sure that car stays put so nobody doesn't know where it's going to go, and he's going to get it rolling and head down pit road and try to get it fixed up, Ken.
Well, that crash was kind of reminiscent of what happened with Cameron Caldwell, although at a much larger speed and to much more consequence. Cameron Caldwell was able to hold it still and really escaped with minimal damage, but the 17 hard into the outside wall. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe there might be some engine damage on that machine, or possibly something that could affect his race car even more with more damage, as battle off pit road stays the same between the top 3. Hickson-Baugh will lead them out. Anna Benefield will be 2nd. William Boisvert will be 3rd. And I'll tell you, Andre, it's just been another case of the drivers in their debut race having the race of their Galaxy Cup Series career, and it's their first race. So what a setter that would be, just to be in your first race, kind of set your tone completely right. And we saw this at Dover, Andre, with F5 Motorsports and how well they've done. It continues to stay true with a lot of the rookies.
It really does. And you know what? This kind of talent being in the league is just such a good thing for the league as a whole. This league is attracting some top shelf drivers. These guys have ability that I could only dream of having. And when potential members see that, they look at that and they're like, hey, there's some real competition here. They get hungry and they want to be involved in it. So just a fantastic showing by these rookies, and you just really love to see it for everybody involved.
Yeah, it's an impressive performance for all these drivers, especially in their debut races. And it's always great to see that this league continues to grow and continues to allow newer drivers to join the join the mix and put on shows of their own, like we've seen with F5 Motorsports and like the case with these debut drivers. And always to mix in with the veteran drivers like Hicks and Ball, and even people like Kevin Steele, Damaris Hickenbottom, even some drivers further back that have been in the series for a while. It's always great to see them mix up with some newer drivers and see how they fare out against each other, because you can have a very high-skilled driver join this league, and then they go against Hicks and Ball. They go against a couple of these drivers who have been here for a while, and it's a great and entertaining battle to watch all the way through. And it has been fun, no doubt, between the 83 and the 63 when they were all close together. And also the 47, you got to give a lot of credit to all those drivers for at least keeping themselves up where they've been and being very, very consistent tonight here at Richmond. Would hope to see them at Bristol and, of course, the rest of the season throughout, because they have been phenomenal all the way through, even on the first green flag of the Galaxy Cup Series career. Got the 1 green signal from the pace car, so we'll go green just as soon as we get back around to turn 4. And that means it's the game for Bryson Nixonbaugh to choose where he's going to restart. Where is he going to restart? It's kind of a question that we've still been answering over the past 2 weeks on where he wants to step on that gas pedal, when he wants to go. Sometimes it's been off of turn 4. Sometimes it's been near the straightaway. You really never know what to expect from the 63, and it's been the same with the rest of this field. They really haven't been able to time it just as well as Nixonbaugh has. So we'll just have to see one more time if this attempt will work for the rest of this field. iRacing pace car will come down to pit road. We'll take a restart on lap 325. And we're just a little bit away left from the end of this race. Green flag back out. Nixonbaugh still up front.
A little bit of wheel spin from that 44 of Kevin Steele. He's now under attack from the 162, who made the decision to take that momentum to the high side. I don't know if he's going to be able to complete that pass, as now he's being challenged on the bottom by Damaris Hickenbottom, as well as the 44. And we got a big wreck right on the backstretch again.
Huge crash with Jonathan Delaney. Lots of drivers involved. Randy Drumhiller as well. Looked to be no yellow, but now the caution flies on lap 325, or 326 actually, of the 400 scheduled laps. This is what really developed on the back straightaway. I believe Cameron Caldwell might have had some extra damage from that. I don't see a back bumper on that race car, and indeed it is the case. He was actually loose off the back straightaway, and then the 30 gets in, and then the 6 of Delaney was kind of swooping by to try and slow down for the wreck, and he inevitably went down and then slid down the racetrack. And that 17 of Hallman had a little bit to watch out for. Here's the onboard with Drumhiller, and just a hard hit to the front end of that race car. And just another look at exactly what happened here on the back straightaway. This is on board with Delaney. This is coming off the back straightaway. He sees the development up front, and there he goes, just sliding down the racetrack.
And he did a great job of keeping it off that inside wall. When I seen that abrupt dart down towards the bottom, I thought for sure he was going to have a hard impact, but he managed to avoid that. And 17 machine behind him, just barely grazing that rear bumper, saving both of their nights. Delaney just adding to the list of unfortunate happenings so far. And now this again gives the 83 another chance to try and figure out, what is Bryson going to do on this restart? When is he going to go? Can he get the jump? I think that's what it's going to come down to. If the 83 could just get the jump alongside Bryson on one of these restarts, that could be what he needs. We've seen that car is powerful in clean air, but when he gets behind another car, when he gets in that traffic, it's just not quite as good. So if he could get the jump, stay alongside him, and potentially take the battle to the backstretch, we could see a different story develop than what we've seen all night, Ken.
Yeah, that definitely could be the case. And no doubt that the back straightaway at Richmond Raceway has been a monster to a lot of these drivers. It swept a lot of drivers off their toes and has sent them around into the inside wall, and is already still playing a factor. We're seeing a lot of drivers lose their race cars in many ways, even later in this race. I would have expected going into tonight that maybe those things would happen just a little bit earlier, as maybe there's colder tires. The track was still changing as the sun started to go down, but it's been the other way around as the nightfall has progressed. And as the track continues to stay under the lights, it's been like that the entire way through. And you're looking at the weather at the moment. The air temp sitting at 74 degrees, just a little bit cooler. Track temp sitting at 77. So it is remarkably colder than what we had at the start of this event. We have 6 miles per hour down to the southeast, kind of veering more to the south, but still mostly around southeast and south, around there, just about 5-6 miles per hour. Conditions still at partly cloudy, has not changed since the drop of the green flag. So a good news that at least the sky has been looking pretty well under the nighttime, and it hasn't really changed as much. Not anything worse or better outside on the weather and the clouds over Richmond Raceway. So Hickenbaugh and Benefield seem to be the dynamic duo that lead the field to green, and they've always done a great job of getting to the green flag. And once again, they'll have another chance to go at it, and we'll get the 1 to green signal. So we'll take one more time around the racetrack. And Andre, we're getting to the final stages of this race. 70 laps to go. Is there much to expect, or is there anything notable you're looking out for now?
Huge aggression. You're going to see these guys sending these cars into the corner, trying to squeeze out every last ounce of performance that these cars can provide. We've pretty much seen that already tonight, but it's only going to be amplified now that there's going to be under 70 laps to go. That's not much time here at Richmond. 70 laps, we got these short 20-second lap times, 21-second lap times on fresh tires, and it's going to be a lot of aggression. But right now, it's the dynamic duo leading them to the green, Ken.
Back to green, Hickenbaugh gets on the gas pedal just quickly enough to get a good gap to the 83 of Benefield, and into turn 1. It'll be all the 63 with the 83 following suit. Kevin Steele to the outside. He's going to be under pressure from the 162 of Probst. He had a little bit of a fight with the 47 before getting past. Most likely might drop all the way back as a loose race car he is fighting off turn 4. He's able to keep it straight, but he's going to lose a lot of positions. They're freight training on the bottom.
Getting stuck on that high side, we've seen it time and time again tonight, and unfortunately now it's Kevin Steele who's fell victims to the clutches of the high side, and he's going to have to try and find the first opening that he can to get to the bottom, but man, they're not making it easy. They are bumper to bumper beneath him, and on top of being stuck on the top lane, it really looks like he is just fighting a very gnarly car. That thing is trying to get sideways at every step and fight him at every turn, so obviously you can see the driver cam now with him. You can see him working that wheel as he makes his way around this track, and overall just not the restart he wanted to see, as now he's getting squirrely, getting to the bottom on turns 3 and 4.
Yeah, Wayne Grassy got very loose, was sort of fishtailing on the back straight away. Danny Myatt also having a piece of that as well. He also got loose, but he will keep it straight. Got another car getting loose as well. The cold tires certainly not helping the situations for a lot of these drivers. They are fighting very snappy race cars at the moment. Dave Fugel will fall to Brandon Pierce. Actually, Brandon Pierce will still yet to pass, but a lot of drivers still getting by to take advantage of the drivers getting loose on the racetrack. Myatt, fortunately, didn't lose as much. He's trying to fight with Wineland for P number 6. That'll leave Hickenbottom to capture P number 5. And Probst continuing to gap. He might catch up to the 47 very soon, Andre.
He definitely could. He's had a lot of speed tonight. Right now on screen, you're looking at the battle between Danny Myatt and 31 of Eric Wineland. Eric now up into P6. Again, like a lot of these drivers, he's had a roller coaster night. Up the running order, down the running order, mistakes and good laps and bad laps, and now through it all, he's managed to get back in the top 10. But under pressure from that 20 machine, I mean, you can see this onboard shot, and that 20 machine is just getting closer and closer every corner, sending those lunges in, and now looking low at the quarter panel.
Gonna try to clear him in 3 and 4. Will he be successful? The answer is yes, and the 31 does not have an answer for it yet. Kevin Steele, although he was fighting that loose race car, got those spots back up. I think now that he's got a couple laps under those tires, under that fresh rubber, he's able to manage his race car just a little bit better. So he's going to try to pounce on the 31 of Wineland for the moment, which will allow Danny Myatt in turn to gain a little bit more time and try to focus on the car right ahead. For the 09 of Damaris Hickenbottom, he's still got a couple of car lengths to get up to that 09 Ford Mustang. And I've been watching the battle for third between the 47 of Boyvert and the 162 of Zach Probst. And boy, this is the closest I've seen them all race. Probst really has not been up to this top 3 all night long. But I think on that fresh rubber, Andre, his car is starting to feel a lot better, and he's in turn allowing more time to be gained on his end to the drivers in front.
And I mentioned earlier in the race that I think I'm a firm believer of the theory that Probst might have a short run setup, because it seems like on these restarts, he really gets these fantastic runs. He gains a few spots, and then as time goes on and the tires wear, he starts to kind of drop back a little bit. Now, he never drops too far back. He's always been lingering in and around the top 5, top 10 area. But right now, like you said, he's closing the gap to that 47 machine, and he's trying to get up into that podium spot. Behind him, you got Damaris Hickenbottom also having a really good night. He's avoided a lot of incidents. His cars seem to be handling just the way he likes it. And I think if the cards fall right for Probst in that 162, if he gets these short runs that his car seems to like at the end of the race, he could be right there.
Yeah, and if he's relying on those short runs, I saw the 09 get a little loose off of turn 2, but that 162 of Probst, if you got that short run car, this is exactly what you want. You want a little short run here, possibly a yellow to go through with it, so that run could be split short, and then you wouldn't have to go any longer than, I'd say, 10, 15 or so laps. Of course, this run's still under progress and still not yet up to the 20-lap mark. You see Christopher Hamann there in the 17. He is currently 4 laps down, so that incident has pushed him to 17th on the board. Just trying to stay on the apron, get out of the way of all the drivers on the lead lap for now, as he let Damaris Hickenbottom and Zach Probst get by. And at the moment, these setups are looking favorable for Probst and Hickenbottom because they are all gaining time on each other. The 162 is slowly putting pressure. I can tell that the 47 probably looking into his rearview mirror and just seeing that 162 and starting to think about how to defend. And then that 09 right behind the 162 is looking to try and catch him and try to make a pass for the top 4 spot. So we're seeing these drivers slowly bunch up together. I see a little bit of smoke right in front of them. Looks to be no harm, no foul between them, but might see a little bit of a scrunch up between those 3.
Riding on board with Zach Probst. You see last time around, Boiver was 1/10 of a second faster. This time, their lap times nearly identical, a 22.3 from both of them. Actually, no, Boiver was just barely sneaking in a 22.297. So very close lap times. It seems like Probst is now slightly dropping in pace. When I say slightly, I do mean slightly. It's thousandths of a second. But this could mean that his car is starting to fade. If he's got that short run setup, maybe this is the pace he's going to have to try and fight through as time goes on.
And you always got to fight your race car through these last portion of laps. And at this point, you're probably just thinking to survive from here on out. You're now almost down to the 50 lap to go marker. And at this point, now you're just on the home stretch, just looking for and seeking that checkered flag, just waiting for it to inevitably get closer and closer. So at the moment now, the aggression may be up, but if you're in a situation maybe like Hickenbottom, like Probst, like the 47, you're going to want to try and stay cool for now and try not to push your car too hard, because let's say yellow doesn't come out, you don't have that to your advantage, it won't help you at all, and you have to continue going with that car that you've used up already, and you won't be as quick. But speaking of which, we saw the gap just about 1 second between Benefield and Hickenbottom has gone down to 0.7. We saw this already, Andre. Maybe have another shot at it, maybe into fruition this time.
We're on board right now with the 83, and I think you're right. Definitely might have another shot at it. It could be that the leader's saving. Bryson Hickenbottom could be conserving. But, like you said, I think they're good to the end. After that last pit stop, they should be able to make it. So it's possible that Adam there thinks that, hey, my car is good enough that I can start pushing it, and I don't think I'm going to use the equipment up so bad to the point that it's going to become undrivable. Whereas maybe Hickenbottom thinks, I better save my stuff because this car is not, it's wearing on the tires and whatnot harder than possibly Benefield's car. So it definitely seems like Benefield's pushing a little bit harder. That time around, Hickenbottom was actually a little bit quicker. Now this time, as they cross the line, the lap times are going to compare to be a 22.288 to a 22.297. So a little bit quicker actually that time from Adam Benefield, and he continues to close that gap.
We're going to continue to monitor that situation between the top 2 leaders, and you look back to 4th, and it is awfully close between the 162 of Zach Probst and Damaris Hickenbottom. It was the other way around. I was expecting the 162 to catch up to the 47, but it's been the other way around as Hickenbottom is now starting to gain on the 162. Possibly, you mentioned that short run car is now starting to fade away because it's not a short run anymore. We're heading into that long run, starting to dip our toes into it. So possibly for Zach Probst, this could mean disaster. Probably not what he was expecting, at least in terms of staying in his position or even gaining up to the podium spot into 3rd. So we'll try to watch that as it continues to go. This is the gap still between the top 2 leaders of Hickenbottom and Benefield. It has remained fairly stagnant. It's gained up now to just about a half a second between those two. So maybe that 83 is starting to push it just a little bit more. But just like that last run, Andre, Hixenbaugh is just getting the better run off of turn number 4. He's not really falling any ground in certain parts of the track where he can lose maybe on entry, but he gains it so much more on exit, and that even matters just more.
Right. This battle right now between Damaris Hickenbottom and Zach Ropes is definitely a developing situation. The 09 is getting these huge runs in the 1 and 2. I mean, he's sending it in, and he seems to have a lot more corner speed in that section of the track, whereas at the other end of the track, that seems to be where Probst is kind of pulling away a little bit. It seems like he's got a little bit more exit speed. Danny Myatt just barely scraping the wall behind these guys battling it out. But the gap seems to grow, and then it kind of comes right back down to just about a couple tenths. So it seems like Damaris Hickenbottom is making these lunges, making these charges, and then if he can't complete it, he sort of lays back, lets his equipment cool down, gives it a break, and then makes another charge. Now, right now, he's actually fallen back a little bit further than he was before. If he falls too much further back, he's got Danny Myatt right there waiting to pounce.
Yeah, any mistake will lose you time, and Damaris Hickenbottom certainly did lose time with the past couple of laps. I think might have just pushed the car a little too hard. I see that he's using a higher entry into the corner, at least through 3 and 4 that I've noticed, that he uses the higher entry through 1 and 2, or not 1 and 2, 3 and 4. He tries to get a higher entry and then tries to get more corner speed on the exit, tries to arc it back down to the yellow line, try to put as much gas in it as he can, and then drift it all the way back up to the wall in the front straightaway, which is where he was trying to gain ground. But as a result, trying to change up your line did not really help out for the 09. And now with Danny Myatt and Kevin Steele looking over the horizon, it might just be a different situation that Hickenbottom might not be going where he planned.
Looking at the leaders right now, the gap has kind of grown a little bit now. It seems like Bryson's pulling away. He brought it back to about 1.3 seconds at one point now. Actually, Benefuel charging back to 0.9 seconds differential between the two of them. So it seems like we're seeing a lot of this rubber banding through the field. These drivers are making these charges and closing the gap a little bit. And then once their tires start to get hot, they kind of fade, and they got to wait to try again and regroup. Right now, the leader is in with some lap traffic, as well as he's navigating the 17 machine, and he's going to let him go no problem, just to go ahead and get around him. But still, it did slow up Hixenbaugh a little bit, allowed the gap to close just a bit, now 0.7 seconds between them, but not quite enough, or at least not as much as Benefield was probably hoping to see.
Yeah, and that lap traffic also might have played a factor into how that gap might have grown over the past couple laps there. You saw the 2 lap cars of Christopher Harmon and Preston McRae. Now the both leaders are getting by. That leaves the 47 still with a gap to go up to those lap cars, and we're seeing that playing as a pick at some points. When you see the leader get in front of a lap car, especially at certain points of the track where passing is at its best, or the passing opportunity is at its best, the leader can make use of that, and then by the time that, let's say, the second place car gets up to that lap car, they're in a position where they really can't pass, or they have to wait to pass, or they get a little bit held up. So then that also grows the gap even further, and that allows the race leader, much like Hixenbaugh, to gain more time and continue on his path. And really choosing where you get by these lap cars is very important into how you can stay up front. As we got one driver down pit road, that is the 27 of Rich Petrucco. Might have been some damage to get by, or just some pit service, so he's going to top off and try to get some things fixed on that race car. He is currently sitting 210 laps down. Just how quickly you can be off the pace. And just like I was mentioning with the positioning of the lap cars, I saw Benefield catch up to Ryan Samuelson just as they were exiting turn 2, and Ryan Samuelson was all the way to the high side. It forced the 83 to swoop down even further down the racetrack, and that in turn allowed for more gap to open up between him and the 63-year Bryson Hixenbaugh. We got a battle up here. Lots of drivers in this fray, Andre.
Looks like Kevin Steele, Damaris Hickenbottom, Eric Wineland, Zach Probst. We got a ton of drivers here. I think that's Danny Myatt in the mix as well. And these guys have kind of been racing around each other all race long, give or take. Wineland obviously being involved in a few accidents early on, going further back towards the back of the pack. Now back up with these guys once again, battling it out as Probst and Steele are going too wide through the corner, through the tri-oval, and into 1 and 2. They're going to remain too wide. If I'm Eric Wineland, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking of ways that I could potentially capitalize, but it's also a little bit unnerving, because when you got guys ahead of you going too wide like that, if something happens, if one of those guys gets a little bit loose or a little bit tight and they wreck in front of you, you got nowhere to go. So Wineland now to the bottom of the 162 machine, trying to bring Damaris Hickenbottom in tow.
Trying to bring him along. Hickenbottom has fallen back to 8th after being at 4th, right behind the 47. Actually, not behind the 47. He was behind... Actually, he was behind Zach Probst. So both of them have fallen all the way back. They're now battling between each other, and that has allowed Danny Myatt, Kevin Steele, Eric Wineland also to get by. Wayne Grassi, Cameron Caldwell might be also in this group as well. Might try to take advantage over how these cars are performing in the long run, and is allowed about 4.7 seconds between them and the 47. So that 47 might have had a little to worry about as they were kind of closing in on him, but I think he might have been comfortable, and he must feel comfortable now knowing that the gap is larger than it was.
Yeah, I would say the 47 is in pretty much just the right place, or at least as much as you could say that for a guy who's not in the lead. Obviously, everybody wants to be in the lead, but right now, he's got a gap to the car ahead. He's got a gap to the car behind, and that means that even though he's not leading, he's in clean air. That car is handling the best that it can possibly handle. He doesn't have to worry about traffic or anybody holding him up or getting in his way. He can just turn laps, let this race play out, and just hope for the best, which is really all you can ask for at a track like Richmond. It's not very often you get a moment to breathe, but that is a luxury that the 47 has found himself with.
And also, Andre, the pressure really isn't there for that 47. You talk about Hickenbottom, he's the race leader. You come with the pressure of being in the catbird seat, possibly something happening to maybe a yellow flag or maybe something else happening that could potentially take you out of the race lead. You're under pressure with that as contact. Very sketchy between the 31 and the 20. Gonna send the 31 around. And as soon as I mentioned a yellow in the possible sequence of events, it has fallen through. Yellow flag on lap number 372 between Eric Wineland and Danny Myatt. This was the look into turn 1. Actually, some help might have been between the 20 of Danny Myatt to the 31. And then extra contact there with Wayne Grassi also getting into. Just to take another look, I'm not sure whether this was contact. Actually, not really. Didn't look like much contact between the two.
Looks like more on the brakes a little too hard there. We've seen it time and time again. And you know, if there was a drinking game for every time we've seen Eric Wineland in a replay, I think I'd do that on the ground. So, or really anybody for that matter, any of these drivers, the brakes seem to be the devil here. These things are evil on corner entry. We're now riding on board with Eric Wineland as he goes for this crazy ride. Once again, managing to avoid any major damage, but he did get quite a hit from that 7 car, I believe it was, that might have damaged his rear end a little bit. But hey, Brandon Pierce has proved that the rear bumper, the rear spoiler, maybe not as important here as it is at other tracks, Ken.
Yeah, another sense of spinning from the 31 of Wineland. Just another one. It almost looked like at first glance that the 20 might have had a little bit of contact, that they might have just made contact that sent the 31 around. But just looking at it more in depth, it just seems as though the 31 was just trying to dive it on the bottom of the 20, and then at that point he just got loose and then went around right in front of the 20. 20 had to go all the way to the bottom of the racetrack, and then Wayne Grassi really had nowhere to go at that point. Got into him. He now has some extra damage on that front end. But meanwhile, battle up front for the race lead off pit road remains the same. Hickenbottom back out front. 4 fresh set of tires for for all of these drivers actually behind the race leaders. It looks like nobody has stayed out, so it will still be these top 3 at the drop of the green flag unless something dramatic happens. There's Randy Drumhiller down pit road. He's going to get his service as well. There's the 83 and the 47 going by. And now we're just less than 30 laps to go in this race. We're now at the closing stretch of this race, Andre. And we saw the aggression. We're still seeing it at its peak effect. We're seeing it at its peak tonight. We really haven't seen this much aggression as we've seen this entire race through. We're still seeing these yellows getting split in the middle of these long green flag runs. Does that give a little more hope to some of these drivers like Probst, like Hickenbottom, that might have better short run cars and are maybe kind of looking at those yellows and possibly looking at them as a point of benefit?
Oh, it absolutely does, 100%. And here's the thing, things are about to get really crazy. We got less than 25 laps to go by the time we go green. These guys are on fresh tires. You're going to see these drivers absolutely pushing these cars, which is probably, as the old saying goes, going to breed cautions. Cautions breed cautions. And that is absolutely true. So if Probst were to get a couple yellows a few laps apart, he's right back in the mix. He's dropped back a bit. He's a little bit further back in the field, but should he get a couple yellows, just a couple consecutive yellows, which is in all likelihood a very probable outcome here, he could be back in the fray.
A lot of drivers with this caution are able to re-rack and possibly gain more positions down the way. And we saw how the development between drivers like Damaris Hickenbottom and Zach Probst catching up to the 47, it all changed when Kevin Steele, Danny Myatt got by. Obviously, the 31 before that spin happened, he was in this group. Wayne Grassy was also here as well. He's still there in 8th. Cameron Caldwell sitting 9th. Dave Fuchs sitting 10th. Alex Prince in 11th. Eric Wineland with that spin, he falls all the way to 12th. So it's not necessarily too much of a loss. He is the second to last car on the lead lap, right in front of Jonathan Delaney, who's sitting right behind him on the racetrack. Got a 1 to go green signal, so we'll be going back green very, very shortly once we head off of turn 4. And once again, it'll be all in the hands of the 63 of Bryson Nixonbaugh, who has been very unpredictable on the restarts and has pretty much been successful each and every attempt, and no one else has been able to time it just as good as that 63 Oreo Coca-Cola Camaro has been able to. So the iRacing pace car will come down pit road. Nixonbaugh will step on the gas pedal off the corner this time around. We're back green on a restart with less than 30 laps to go in this race.
You know, I've noticed that's about the same place he got on the throttle the last 2 restarts. So I almost wonder if his strategy, big wreck behind him, that's the 44. Kevin Steele hard into the outside wall, possibly more cars involved. I think that's the 17 that was up on the top of the track. Right now, the 44 rolling back down the banking. We're going to see if we can get a replay and identify exactly what happened here, Ken. This was kind of crazy.
Oh, and heartbreak for the 44 of Steele, who's running so well this entire race. We'll take a replay. This is on the outside of the 47 of William Boyver. I think might have just gotten loose in there. He does. He actually just gets loose trying to hang on with the 47 on the outside. Got a little bit loose. I remember we saw this in the last run, Andre, where the 44 had a couple of moments where it seemed like that 44 was going to snap around and he was inevitably going to succumb to that and he was going to go spinning. But this time it seems to be the case. That car is not handling well on those cold tires. So while we're under yellow, we're going to take a moment to step away. You're watching the Galaxy Cup Series on 3Y TV. Nixonbaugh still leading. Welcome back to Richmond Raceway. Bryson Nixon Ball at the front of this field. We have still yet to go green on the back straightaway with the pace car at the front of the field all doubled up. Right now, the field is looking like this. Bryson Nixon Ball first, Benefield second, William Boisvert into third, Danny Myatt fourth, Damaris Hickenbottom into the top five, then Grassy, Zach Probst, Cameron Caldwell, Alex Princeton, Dave Fugue into the top 10. We come off of turn 4. Pace car is off. We are back green under the lights here at Richmond Raceway. Hickenbottom with another great start will lead the field. Then at turn 1 with the 83 of Benefield right behind. Boisvert and Danny Myatt also doing battle with Damaris Hickenbottom, Owen Grassy right behind.
Damaris Hickenbottom is going to slide into line single file above Wayne Grassy. And for the most part, these guys are staying single file. The gap between the leaders right now, the 63 and the 83, is about 1 car length and remaining steady. Behind them, it's about 3 car lengths back to your third place runner, William Boiver. And behind him, it is a cluster of cars. You got Danny Myatt. And now the 83, the second place car, has spun out on the backstretch down onto the inside wall. No caution as of yet. He's trying to get that car recovered and brought back. He's got it back up, rolling. Not too much damage that I can see, but he has fallen all the way back to the tail end of the lead lap. Unfortunate for our second place runner. Ken?
Adam Benefield was having a great race up until that moment. Got loose off of turn 2 and no yellow, so we'll stay green. A lap number 387 out of 400. We are approaching just 10 laps to go in this race. Hickenbottom 1 and 2, clean and perfect like he's been all race long. And now that leaves the 47 to William Boisvert to be battling for second as he's got Danny Myatt. Now the yellow will come out. I believe might have been an incident with Danny Drumhiller. Not sure. I think he might have been involved. I think him going very slow. Actually, Jonathan Delaney might have gone around. I see smoke coming from his race car. That might have been an incident there. So we'll take a replay, or we're just trying to analyze what happened. We'll try to analyze what happened. Try to take a look at exactly the situation. Actually, it was not Drumhiller involved. It was Wyland and Delaney.
Again, that's interesting. I think I've seen that movie before, actually. So it seems like these guys are really fighting loose cars. We've seen it so often that they're just getting loose on their own. And then when you get side by side with these other drivers, especially drivers as aggressive as Delaney and Wineland, who are trying to get everything out of their car, and rightfully so, it makes things a little bit dicey. And you see these situations occur. Unfortunately, we don't have a replay. We apologize for that. But right now, this kind of puts everybody in an interesting situation because it's lap 390. It's going to be less than 10 to go by the time we go green. And the question is, do you pit? We just put about 10 laps on tires. Well, less than 10 laps, but we did put some laps on these tires. And I'm not sure if it's enough to really make a difference. But if you're somebody a little bit further back, do you maybe take that gamble? Come down pit road and take 4, take 2? What do you do?
It's a tough call, but I'd say, just like I said at the beginning of this broadcast, you kind of got a monkey see, monkey do with the leader. And as Bryson Nixon Ball stays out, that means everyone will stay out right behind. I don't think anyone will take that risk to go down pit road and lose that track position, because if you stay with the main group, at least that all of them are on the same set of tires as you, and you won't really you just have to contend on driver skill. It's not necessarily a battle between the old tires and the fresh rubber, and it won't be something that'll play into effect near the end of this race. As we're approaching just 9 laps to go in this race, we're just going to explain what's going to happen from here on out. Of course, we're going to go back green flag racing, but if we get a yellow with just 3 laps to go, possibly 4 laps to go, it'll push us in a 3 to go territory, and then we can possibly go into green-white checkers if we get another yellow from there on out. And the green-white checkers will go in this manner. They'll take 1 attempt here, and they'll go green with just 2 laps to go, and they'll try to get to the white flag if a yellow comes out before the white flag is flown. And then we'll re-rack them up, try once more again. But if not, and if the leader gets to the white flag, then the field will be frozen. Any flag will end the race, including the checkered flag. And then we'll crown a winner at the end of tonight's race here at Richmond. Still, now just, I was going to say a long way to go, but it might just feel like an eternity, I feel like, Andre, to some of these drivers now that they're under the pace laps. They're now re-racked with just a couple laps to go, and any move you make has to be the move now. If you wanted to make a move all race long, if you've been thinking about it, now's the time to really execute.
It absolutely is, and you're right about it seeming like an eternity, man. These guys have been wheeling these cars for just over 3 hours now. And when these laps wind down, you can see the end in sight. It's almost like the closer you get to the end, the slower time goes. You're like, I just want to get to the end. They're getting tired. Their muscles are starting to wear out. They've been cranking on these wheels for 3 hours. And these guys wanted it to go green. They wanted to get to the end, get this thing wrapped up, and now they got to pace around and face another restart, another opportunity for chaos to emerge. We said it before, we'll say it again. Cautions breed cautions, and at a track like Richmond, that definitely holds true. Side note, we talked about Zach Probst having that short run car, and look at that. He's in row 3, the inside line. That is the preferred line. So who knows if he's going to be able to make some moves here, Ken?
Yeah, that's a great point. We were talking about how Damaris Hickenbottom and guys like Zach Probst on the short run cars could be able to gain off of this. With that yellow, it helps them even more. Pace cars down pit road. Hickenbaugh and William Boyver will take the green flag with just 7 laps to go here at Richmond. Another great start for the 63, but it's all looking about what the battles are brewing right behind with the 09 and the 20 side by side off of turn 2. They're all clean.
And it was a lot of checkup there in the field. I don't think anybody expected Bryson to go when he did. He finally changed up his pattern. You know, I mentioned before that he had got on the throttle the same time 3 times in a row. This time it was different, and I think that's what caused that checkup. As the caution flag flies once more, we're not entirely sure what happened. I didn't quite catch anything, but the yellow flag is out, and that means we're going to do it all over again, Ken.
And this time, the caution involves the 31 of Eric Wineland. Saw him very slow. He was 14th right before that yellow came out. He's going to whip himself back around and lose even more spots in the process. And this was coming off of turn number 4. 31 just trying to get as much gas as he can. And another situation of the back end stepping out, and not enough that the 31 can do to correct it back straight. So he goes around into the grass, and that once again triggers another yellow with just 6 laps remaining in this race. And if you're guys like Zach Probst, you're a little bit far behind. You got a couple cars to get by. You've really had a lot of drivers to fight with before you can get up to the race lead, but this could be beneficial as the short run cars will help that 162. It'll help with the 09 drivers who have been successful on a couple lap stints where you're going maybe 5-10 laps. It'll help them immensely. There's the pace car back at the front of the field, and once again we'll re-rack them.
Yes, sir, we will, and it's going to be just as exciting this time, if not more exciting than the last restart. And, you know, you mentioned Probst has some cars to get around with that short run setup, but I honestly, I think he could. I think he could snag a podium position very realistically. Unfortunately, we didn't stay green quite long enough that time for him to really get the opportunity to pass too many cars, so he kind of just stayed where he was. But we're going to see. You know, these restarts, if we go into the green-white checkered territory, we have, you know, an attempt at a green-white checkered, and that could help him out even further. So we're going to see how that plays out. But if you're Bryson Hickenbaugh right now, what do you think's going through his mind? Like, the driver who's been challenging him the most isn't quite up front anymore. He had that spin earlier. The cars behind him right now maybe aren't quite as dialed into the track as his. So you got to think maybe he's feeling confident, but at the same time, you got to know on these restarts, one mistake is all it could take to end his night. I mean, he's led most of the laps tonight, but there's only one lap that you need to lead, you know? So do you think maybe he's getting a little bit nervous with all these cautions coming out?
I think in the nature that Bryson Hickenbaugh really handles situations, I don't think he's nervous whatsoever. I think he's probably watching, he's monitoring, he's just looking at the drivers behind. And I think with the trend of his recent restarts, although he can probably make a mistake at some point further down going around the racetrack, in terms of the restarts, he does a great job of setting himself up for success and setting that gap early so that if he does make a mistake per se, he doesn't lose as much time, or at least he loses the time, but it's not enough for somebody to get around him or go to the inside and try to dive in to make a move. It's not enough because it will be a gap that the drivers behind could gain, but it won't be as much. So the 63, I think in his manner, all he has to do now is just hit his marks, continue to stay how he's been this entire race, continue to stay calm and composed, and he will walk away with a 13th win in the Galaxy Cup Series season here tonight at Richmond. We've got the notification that the green-white checkered racing will be in effect. So we'll take our first attempt this time by. We'll take it with just 3 laps to go. Of course, just like I mentioned, we would go all the way up to 3 attempts. And if the yellow comes out before the white flag on our 3rd attempt, the race will end under yellow and the field will be frozen. So we're seeing a lot of cautions late in this running, Andre. And just like we've said just a little bit earlier, cautions do breed cautions.
Absolutely. You know, I'm looking at this 47 car starting on the high side, and I'm thinking about if I'm him, I'm going to be super aggressive on this restart. I'm going to try to not only start when Bryson gets on the throttle, but I'm going to try to predict what he's going to do. I'm going to try to go before him. Because I think, honestly, at this point, that is the only way to beat Bryson is, you know, beat him in his own game. Try and predict his next move. Obviously, that's a difficult task, but now the pace car is going to pull off the track, and they're going to get racing.
Pace car will be off and will be enough to get the green flag. Bryson Ixenbaugh with a phenomenal start, but this time it is different for the 47. He's going to have Danny Myatt to the inside with just a couple laps remaining left into this race. Bryson Ixenbaugh all out in front. They're side by side for second off of turn 3 and 4.
A comfortable lead for Bryson, but behind him it is all-out battle. Danny Myatt side by side with that 47 car. And trying to get a little bit of a side draft there as he swerves up the track. You got Damaris Hickenbottom behind him trying to join into the fray. And I do believe this is going to be the final lap of the race as they get squirrely on the backstretch.
Bryson Ixenbaugh into 3 and 4. Going to come off and take his 13th win in the Galaxy Cup Series here tonight at Richmond. Bryson Ixenbaugh is a winner once again.
Behind him, they are battling it out to the line even still. Damaris Hickenbottom now crossing the line. Danny Myatt, Zach Probst, Wayne Grassy, these drivers who have endured so much this race, so much chaos, so much adversity, and these guys have all made it to the end of this 400-lap event.
Can't believe that Delaney picked all the way back up to finish 9th in tonight's event. Brandon Pierce will come home 11th. Dave Few 10th. Eric Wineland, after spinning a couple of times, will finish 12th. Kevin Steele, after that spin, heartbreaking finish, 13th for him. Samuelson into 14th. Benefiel, who was battling with Ixenbaugh all night long, will finish 15th. But right now, you're looking at the smoke formed up on the front straightaway by Bryson Ixenbaugh, a winner once again here at Richmond. And he's won all the Richmond races this season. Andre, I mentioned that he was the last winner in the regular season. He is now a winner once again. We'll take a look at the results and see exactly where everybody finished, and we'll go over all of them. And we're going to start, obviously, with Ixenbaugh taking his 13th win. William Boyvert finishes 2nd, was able to get by Danny Myatt, who comes home 3rd. Damaris Hickenbottom comes home in a great finish for him in 4th. Zach Probst will come home in the top 5. Cameron Caldwell 6th. Wayne Grassy 7th. Alex Princeton 8th. Jonathan Delaney finishes 9th. Dave Few, after a spin earlier in the race, finishes in the top 10.
And behind them to round out your top 20, it's going to be Brandon Pierce, Eric Wineland, Kevin Steele, Ryan Samuelson, Adam Benefiel. Benefiel, after a fantastic showing tonight, unfortunately spun out, didn't get a caution, and he's going to wind up P15. 16th is Randy Drumhiller, Christopher Haman in 17th, Preston McRae in 18th, Brian Mabry in 19th, and in 20th, rounding out your top 20, it's Joseph Lester after a rough night.
Back to 21st, 198 laps down is the 217 of Jack Durham. We talked to him earlier in this race. But Rich Petrucco, who started up in this field, comes home 22nd. Josh Copernall finishes 23rd. Matthew Woods finishes 315 laps down in 24th. Daniel Fields will be the final driver of this 25-car field of 363 laps down to finalize this field for tonight's Galaxy Cup Series round of 16 race here at Richmond Raceway. What a drive for Bryson Ixenbaugh, taking a win once again. We're going to take a short break, and once we come back, we'll be live with post-coverage from the Richmond Raceway and get all the interviews of the top 3 and get our final thoughts before wrapping up to go to Bristol next week. We'll be back. Stay tuned. We got more coming next. back live from the Richmond Raceway, where we start our post-race coverage on 3Y TV after 400 laps of Galaxy Cup Series racing. And we'll head to Victory Lane, where we'll get the interview with our race winner, actually 13-time race winner, Bryson Ixabal, in the booth. First of all, Bryson, congratulations on your win tonight, your 13th of the season. You came into the season with a win already at this very track. You go into here in the playoffs and get it done. First of all, what do those 2 wins now mean to you, although that you're locked into the playoffs in the next round?
It's great to go on a run like this. I had a stretch at the beginning of the season where I was getting a lot of wins and running up front a lot, and then I had some incidents during the summer. I still got top 5s, but wasn't running as good as I probably thought I should. So it's good to get in here and get 3 consecutive wins at the start of the playoffs.
Yeah, and it's been a great run for you and your team in the 63, and especially Highside Racing now 2 in a row here. You're looking for you actually got 3 in a row now. Actually, you won at Daytona, winner at Darlington. You're a winner at Richmond. This is the second time it's happened, and the first time it happened was when you did it before. So just tell us how that is for you, and of course, I think expanding more into the race itself. Tell us how that car was feeling and how your run was really changing over the course of the night.
Car was real good. Like I managed to get a little bit more better drive off. It wasn't so loose. It was getting there a little bit on the long runs, but we didn't have a long enough run to really make it matter there, because we started getting some, and then cautions would come out and break it up. But it was real good on the short run, able to hold off Benefiel for all those laps there. I still think he's probably a little bit better, but he just couldn't get around me.
Well, Bryson, it's been a great playoffs, actually. It's been probably the perfect playoffs you could ever have here in this first round. And before we let you go to celebrate your victory, you got any teams or anybody you'd like to shout out or thank for making tonight's effort possible?
Got to shout out my teammates at Highside. We had a Damaris Hickenbottom this week, joined us, and he got a top 4. His first start with us, ran top 5 pretty much the whole race. Fun racing with him. Other teammates, Cam Stone and Cody Berg, couldn't be here this week, but they're in the playoffs. They hope to go into Bristol and advance into round 2.
All right, Bryson, well, we thank you for taking the time to talk with us, and of course, we wish you luck going into Bristol. Congratulations on your 13th win this season.
Thank you, guys.
Bryson Ixabal, a winner here at Richmond. We'll take it back to P number 2, where the driver in his first start, the 47 William Boisvert, is trackside with Andre Grammers.
William, you got a copy, bud?
Yes, loud and clear. How are you
Hey,
guys?
we're doing good. How are you?
Doing great, man. That was a good run for my first time.
Absolutely, a rookie to the league, and what a showing. You showed up and you showed the league veterans why you're here, why you should be here. Looked like the car was dialed in. What can you tell me about the race tonight?
It was fun. At the end, it was really tense. It would never finish. I'm super glad that the 20 car raced me clean on the final green-white checkered. I got my restarts right all night, and I was super worried that for the final one we would get to my inside, but I was able to hold them off on the outside, so I'm glad.
Absolutely, it was a fantastic run. Now, did you have more of a long run car or a short run car? Because we seem sort of a 50-50 split, where some of these guys were strong on the short runs and then some of them were stronger on the long runs, but it looked like you had a little bit more speed on those short run restarts.
Yeah, you're right. But at the same time, like I was no match for the 63 and the 83, but I was always able to get like a few seconds during the long runs from the 4 guys behind me. So I was, kind of in my own zone, doing my own thing, and yeah, that turned out pretty well. I had no stress pretty much the whole race because I was by myself.
Absolutely. Well, you put on a great show, and we're looking forward to seeing what you can do at Bristol in the following tracks, and hoping you carry that momentum forward.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you guys, and see you at Bristol. I'll try to go get them.
Alrighty. Well, thank you for your time, William.
Thank you guys.
That is William Boisvert out of the booth. Very excited about that P2 podium finish.
We'll slip back to the last podium spot to finish here at Richmond, and that is the 20 of Danny Myatt. Had to fight through a lot to get to where he finished, but nonetheless, a great finish nonetheless. And Danny, first of all, welcome to the 3Y TV booth, and what a roller coaster race you had tonight. It was all the way to the front, to the back, all the way back to the front. Just walk us through your adventure here at Richmond at 400 laps.
Yeah, man, roller coaster would be saying it lightly. So everything was going good, and then I got an EOL, and I was trying to get my position back. Obviously, I was sitting on the track, which probably shouldn't have done, but then I got an EOL when I was trying to get my position back, and I got a black flag because I passed some cars, and then the green fell. So I had to serve the black flag, went 2 laps down. Man, I was debating parking it right then, but I figured a lot of cautions. Might as well just ride it out and see what happens. I knew I had a fast car, so the cautions fell right. I got the lucky dog, got it to get back up there. It worked out well.
Certainly worked out well for you and your 20 team. Going into Bristol, I know that you're one of the playoff drivers in this round of 16. How much confidence or how much of a boost does this give you and your team now going into Bristol with a good points gap, and now that you've gained on a lot of the other drivers here tonight?
Yeah, man, I had a really bad week last week, and I figured I pushed Darlington aside because I knew I wasn't going to do well there. I did a little worse than I was hoping to, but I knew I was going to do well at Richmond if I could stay clean. In Bristol, I think I can do well again if I keep it clean.
All right, Danny, well, congratulations on your podium spot. And before we let you go, do you got any sponsors or teams you want to thank for making tonight's effort happen?
Nah, man, I ain't got nothing like that, but I appreciate y'all broadcasting it. And
well, of course, we thank you for taking the time to talk with us. It's always great to talk to you, and of course, an amazing finish for you and your team. We hope to see you at Bristol next week, and we wish you the best of luck.
I appreciate it, man.
Danny Myatt out of the booth, and that finalizes the top 3 interviews for tonight's 400 lapper here at Richmond Raceway. Andre, what a race we had, and what a race maybe that we expected. A lot of things changing around us and happening each and every moment on the track. We really couldn't keep our eyes off of some of the battles and the trains on the racetrack. We saw how dominant Bryson Nixonball was going into Bristol. Is this the same trend we might expect to see, or you think at the last great Coliseum is going to be even more chaotic?
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that tonight might have been a bit of a wake-up call to these guys. We saw a lot of over-aggression, a lot of instances of drivers just pushing their cars a little bit too hard, and that's to be expected. It's the playoffs. You know, the clock is ticking. You have to perform at this point in this season. There is no more riding around. There's no more being content. You have to push. And with that sort of motivation comes a lot of aggression, but at the same time, that is a double-edged sword because sometimes it results in races like tonight where there's a lot of cautions, drivers got a lot of damage on their cars that's going to prevent them from doing well and getting the points that they need to progress. So maybe after this event, when they go to Bristol, they're going to be thinking in the back of their mind, maybe I should take it a little bit easier because I don't want to be eliminated because of a 7-car pile up or anything like that, you know? So I think Bristol should be a fun, close race, but I don't quite think it's going to have the level of chaos that tonight had.
Certainly a hot take there, because I'd assume probably Bristol might be even more chaotic than what we saw here tonight. Of course, Bristol being the shorter track and the smaller track with just less space, if we saw the amount of chaos and the amount of struggles that we saw a lot of drivers have here at Richmond at a wider track, I can only imagine what might happen in Bristol next week. But also, in all fairness, your point makes a lot of sense in the sense that it might be just a wake-up call for a lot of drivers to start focusing on a lot of the short track factors that maybe they weren't expecting going into the race. Maybe some things that threw them off guard could possibly keep them, at least let them learn going into next week at Bristol, and they'll be able to use that to their advantage and try to fix some of the mistakes they may have made here tonight at Richmond. Well, that'll do it for us here at 3Y TV. A great race here at Richmond Raceway for the Galaxy Cup Series. We appreciate and thank each and every one of you for tuning into the broadcast tonight. Also, thanks to SimTV for providing the camera packages and providing the best looks of the virtual race cars here under the lights at Richmond Raceway. Congratulations to Bryson Ixabal, 13-time winner here at Richmond in the Galaxy Cup Series. So for everyone at the Galaxy Cup Series, and on behalf of us at 3Y TV, Carlos Costa for the producer tonight, Andre Grandbush in the booth, my name is Kenneth Bueno, saying so long from Virginia. We'll see you at Bristol next week at the last great Coliseum.